good afternoon or good evening, everyone, depending on where you may be joining us from. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Together Towards Recovery, the first national youth-led conference in Canada during the pandemic that aims to discuss and help shape the path forward towards youth recovery after COVID-19. My name is Lila Mansour and I will be your MC for today's event. I am joining today from Prince George, a city in northern British Columbia. I'm privileged to be a settler on the beautiful unceded territories of the Lheidli-T'enneh, part of the Dakla or Carrier First Nations. I would also like to acknowledge that our guest speakers and participants are joining from diverse Indigenous territories, including treaty territories, unceded territories, and Inuit or Métis homelands across Turtle Island. Before the official conference begins at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be hosting our networking session for the next half an hour. So before we get into the networking session, allow me to introduce the wonderful organizations who are joining us today. We have IG Vital Health, and we are joined by Nazim Bagarov. I apologize if I mispronounce any of your names. We also have New Mentality, and joining us from that organization are Lindsay Whelans, Ferozan Nasiri, Dea Mohan, and Taiba. From the YWCA Hamilton, we are joined by Jamil Miller and Noura Afifi. From the Refugee Center, we have Jude Ibrahim. From OACAS, we are joined by Megan Lindley. From jack.org, we have Sadia Fazalier. From the CMHA Peel Dufferin, we are joined by Allison Price. And from the Kids Help Phone, we have Ravina Anthony. Each organization will introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their work, and then you as participants will have the opportunity to ask your own questions for these organizations. So let's begin with our first organization, IG Vital Health.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Yeah, good, great. Thank you for the introduction. And I would first like to say that it's good to see everyone. And I wanted to thank all the leadership of the Abrar Mental Health Services in this Together campaign, the entire team for putting this great event together about this very important topic and issue that needs to be addressed. And hopefully this is going to be one of these contributing steps toward the process of recovering for youth all over Canada and anyone and everyone who is in need of mental health support, in these trying times. I am the director of IG Vital Health Mental Health Services. My name is Nazim Bagarov. A little bit about our organization. We're a mental health service provider that we specialize specifically on working with vulnerable communities, marginalized communities. A lot of the work that we do actually concerns the refugee and newcomer space and communities within that also fit within that group of communities. A lot of individuals who are have something, one or the other thing, to do with immigration law, as well as a program for Indigenous and First Nation community members. At our organization, we offer mental health support in a form of assessment, longer-term treatments, and the benefits developed are dual. We are delivering mental health support, quality, timely mental health support, working 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. with no wait list at our clinic. We primarily assist individuals, families, youth, and children age 5 and older in the GTHA area in the province of Ontario. But that being said, we are open via telehealth capacity to assisting individuals from all over Canada, and we do so all the way from BC, Quebec as a province, and Alberta, and from different ends of the country. The second part of the benefits that we deliver to our clientele are the professional reporting that often is very useful, and we have a proven record in across various legal branches and processes, legal processes that often assist our clients, not only with their, the assistance is not only with their directly through psychotherapy and counseling for their mental health support for them and their families, but also with professional reporting that is often a crucial instrumental in very large, if not the most important aspects or uncertainties in their lives for refugees and a lot of the immigrants. It's the future, their future status and position in Canada and Canadian society. So that's a little bit about us. Yeah, looking forward to the event, and if anyone has any questions, please, I'm here. And looking forward to all other introductions, meeting everyone, and to the event itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nazim. Up next is a new mentality.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dia. I go by she, they pronouns.
And I'm Taba, and I go by she, her pronouns.
And today we'll briefly discuss the new mentality in our hub. We're both youth allies, and today we are supported by our adult allies, Lindsay and Frozen, if you two could wave. So now Lindsay will be sharing her screen as we get started with our presentation.
All right. So to provide some background, in 2007, Children's Mental Health Ontario, CMHO, and the Center of Excellence both partnered together because there was a need for youth voice in the mental health system. The New Mentality Project was created and has effectively grown from a small pilot to a well-known and established province-wide program that focuses on youth engagement in mental health. The New Mentality Program has 22 sites all across Ontario, with Strides Toronto being the only Scarborough-based site.
CMHO is the voice of children's mental health and has identified some leadership opportunities for youth through the new mentality to create an inclusive space where youth can discuss issues related to their own mental health, personal experiences, and simultaneously address systemic issues that arise with the support of structures to ensure that youth can speak openly and safely about their experiences. In our group specifically, we focus on the community close to our hub, which leads us to focus on anti-Black racism and create a dialogue between about race, culture, ethnicity, privilege, and microaggressions of BIPOC folks in workplaces and at our hub. Now we're going to move into what the new mentality is. So the new mentality is a CMHO initiative. Its motto is that it's for youth by youth, and it's a provincial mental health advocacy group designated by the Scarborough team. Our specific site at Scarborough is located at 1200 Markham Road through the Ontario initiative with CMHA Youth Wellness Hubs. As a group, we focus on catering towards youth needs. So as youth, we understand issues within the community the best since we get to interact with other youth in the community. And in that way, we are able to collect more effective data on the types of tactics that we can use and implement that'll cater towards youth needs for all of our projects in the community. We also seek to address stigma and break down barriers that might be stopping youth from accessing services in their community. And because youth voices are so unheard and overlooked, we provide a very unique perspective to the mental health system. The structure in which we work in is creating seasonal initiatives, and we also provide youth input to larger groups on the side. Overall, we look through all of our projects through a lens of diversity that takes into account marginalized groups.
All right, and I think we're going to move into one of the examples of our previous projects, which was actually a collaboration with TTC. So in 2019, New Mentality, the Scarborough Hub, specifically partnered with the TTC, and our goal there was to provide resources for youth in the community that were catered by youth, targeting specific intersectionalities, whether it's students, people with different identities, newcomers. And these posters were created entirely by students, resources chosen by students, as well as artworks done by youth. And then they were displayed in every single TTC station along line 2. Now, initially this was planned to run throughout Mental Health Week, but fortunately we had the opportunity to extend it to a full month of exposure. To kick it off, we held a press event at Scarborough Central Station. Now, this is just one example of a previous project that we've done as the Scarborough New Mentality. However, groups from all over Ontario, part of New Mentality, are creating initiatives every season to support youth in specific communities based on the issues that are relevant to their own communities. For youth who are interested in joining New Mentality and a specific chapter, you can contact Fiza or Marianne, the network coordinators at the heart of New Mentality, or check out our website. Thanks for listening.
And if anyone does have any questions, we can take them.
Thank you so very much, representatives from New Mentality. We'll move on to the next presentation just so that we can stay on track for time. Up next is the YWCA Hamilton.
Hello, that was amazing. Such great youth-led work, New Mentality. My name is Jamil Miller, and I'm the Youth Programs and Advocacy Coordinator for the YWCA Hamilton. So yeah, a little bit about our organization is our mission is to amplify women and girls' voices in the Hamilton community. And under my role, I kind of act as a youth connector to the different programs that we have and the different departments that we have. We have a very large, wide range of offerings from employment to newcomer opportunities as well. And my colleague Nora will go into that as well in a little bit. But under my role in youth programs, I have the privilege of coordinating a group called the Rise Collective, which is a youth-led collective that centers and amplifies the voices of young women, non-binary, and gender-fluid youth in Hamilton. And so what it means to rise, or think about that maybe in an acronym, is we use different words like reflect and rest and recharge, influence, integrate and imagine, sustain, support and strategize, and then engage, empower and educate. So just thinking of different words that connect to the word rise, or the letters that are in that word, and make our events and workshops our art movements that are informed and led by youth in our community. So yeah, the purpose of the program is really to have and create a holistic and intentional programming for all youth that empowers and engages. And so what that means and looks like is that we outreach and look to get youth in our community to lead workshops or have opportunities to have their voices at the forefront. And so some things we've done in the past, this past year, is had an event with a local collaging artist by the name of Stilo Star, and we did art and collaging around honoring Black Canadian women. And so that's just an example of one of the things that we recently did that was youth-led and really cool. And then just fast forwarding in terms of how you can get involved, or what you can sort of look forward to if there's, things that you're sort of like thinking about, like a workshop, or maybe you are an artist, or maybe you have an interest, or you have like an advocacy, focus that you've been really wanting to sort of amplify or get more support around. I could work with you to put on an event in our local community to get some youth-led voices to the table. Just like our mental health, an amazing organization that we're happy to collaborate with, and hopefully in the future do some really cool things. So that's pretty much the gist of what Rise Collective is and my role and what I have the privilege of being able to do every day with my job. And so with that, I'll put in the chat, but if the best way of, we love you too, the best way to stay in contact is to email me, and then we can go from there about how to get connected. Thanks for the love in the chat, and I will take questions, I think, a little bit later, but all right.
Thank you so much, Jamil. I'm feeling so inspired by everybody from all the different organizations. I will note that please try to stick to 3 minutes just so we can stay on time and so that we're able to hear from all of the wonderful organizations that are joining us today. So I will keep track of time. Once you reach the 3 minutes, I will give you a warning to wrap up so we can end before the conference is supposed to begin at 5. So up next, we have the Refugee Center.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be a part of this initiative. My name is Jude Ibrahim, and I am the mental health coordinator at the Refugee Center. The Refugee Center is a Canadian nonprofit organization that provides a sustainable structure of integration for refugees and newcomers in Canada, and sharing here with you are the variety of services that we provide to all newcomers. So at the Refugee Center, we have 5 main sectors: the legal clinic, the employment sector, the academic sector, the orientation sector, and currently the new sector, which is the wellness support sector. So we really focus on providing a holistic sense of services, and we really believe that focusing on the different areas of life enable a sustainable form of integration for newcomers in Canada. So over here, all our services are for free, and they're accessible for all newcomers across Canada. And currently, with everything being online and virtual, we're able to connect with newcomers across all provinces. Starting here, we have legal aid, which starts with legal services for asylum seekers and newcomers. And all our services can be accessible on our website. I'll be adding this service poster in the chat where you can access it, where all the hyperlinks are attached. We also have language classes like French and English classes. We also have opportunities for volunteers and internships, and really focus on giving opportunities for students as well. Since I'm more in the realm of the wellness support, I'm really excited to be a part of this conference to extend the kind of services that we are providing and to acknowledge how wellness is a key factor in our lives and the lives of newcomers, and really focusing on just this holistic approach and how everything from education to employment to legal aid impacts the individual's wellness. So in terms of our wellness services, we have seasonal activity programs like cooking night, yoga workshops, game night. We also have support groups that are held bi-weekly. And as a currently also mental master's student in art therapy, we're trying to integrate new forms of services such as art therapy workshops and creative activities that really creates a sense of community in creative ways and allow us to connect and express ourselves in different ways. So this is kind of the overview of the Refugee Center. Like I said, I'll add in the link to this poster, and would love to have some questions if anyone would like to address them after. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jude. That was wonderful. Now up next, we have the OACAS.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan. I am the Youth Service Analyst with the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies. In case you're wondering what OACAS stands for, I just sent some information into the chat, but I'm here to talk a little bit about our new Take 5 project. It launched on It launched on May 14th, which was the Provincial Children and Youth in Care Day. So we received funding from the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, and together with our incredible Youth Advisory Committee, I think probably 30 plus community organizations at this point, and experts from across the province, we've brought together a really incredible interactive online space that's focused on reducing mental health risk and isolation for children and youth in and from care. Our Youth Advisory Committee is built entirely by former youth in care. So it's been a really incredible process to see how the website has come to fruition. That was sort of the first phase of our launch, but you'll see if you head over to the website, there is a calendar where we have upcoming live events that are going to be happening too, because we're really focused on reducing isolation and building community connection for youth in care across the province. So we'll have virtual hangouts, we have youth-led workshops that are coming up. And in addition to that, there's tons of information and resources. There's also a section for caregivers that will include some trainings too. So I've also put my email in the chat as well. If you'd like to connect and ask any questions, or if you think there might be space for your resources, or maybe to highlight some of the work that you're doing on our website as well, we would love to be able to collaborate with you. And you'll see I put the Take 5 website on there, but also the landing page on OACAS's website, which also includes our toolkit, as well as our flyer if you want to circulate it. I know most people aren't going into the office, but if you wanted to post it wherever when we are able to be back together in person, that would be amazing too. And I'll leave it at that, short and sweet.
Thank you so much, Megan. Up next, we have jack.org.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sadia. I am a network representative with jack.org. My job is to represent the youth in our network and bring what they want to see to the table. And I am really excited to be here. So jack.org is Canada's youth leading mental health charity that works to train and empower our young leaders. We do that through a variety of programs. We have our Jack Summits, our Jack Chapters, and our Jack Talks. 3 amazing programs that really reach the youth directly, and we focus on giving them the tools and the education they need to start having conversations in their communities. We also have an amazing resource called Be There, which is a free online resource where anybody can go to see and learn how to support somebody in a mental health crisis or just when they might need support. So I'll send all those links into the chat, but if you're looking to get connected with jack.org, you know what's so convenient about working for this organization? Our name is our URL. So everything you can find jack.org, and on social media, it is Jack with the dot spelled DOT.org, and everywhere there. I truly can't do our programs justice when we talk about it. So please feel free to check it out, and thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you so much, Sadia. Next, we have the CMHA Peel Dufferin.
Okay, great, perfect. Thank you so much. So my name is Allison Price, and I am here representing the Canadian Mental Health Association Peel Dufferin branch. So I just wanted to, highlight very generally what some of our services are, because we have a ton of programs and I got 3 minutes. So I just wanted to let you know that we are located and we support the Brampton, Mississauga, Caledon, and Dufferin sector, but the Canadian Mental Health Association is a fantastic organization. They've been around, I believe, since about 1918, and the Peel Dufferin branch has been around for almost 60 years. And they are, one of the main service providers and organizations that really support the community with mental health concerns through education and awareness, through case management, through groups, through crisis services, etc. So at this point, if you want to connect with us, we've sort of changed our hours since the pandemic and tried to make ourselves a little bit more accessible. So if you call us anytime between 8 and 8, you can get access to a mental health worker as well, whether that's you needing to talk to someone or just sometimes needing a little bit of information for yourself or a family member. You can also connect with our 24/7 crisis support. And for the most part, our services tend to support individuals 16 and up. I'll speak very briefly about the program that I work in, but for individuals 16 and up. And then if by chance someone was to connect with us and they were, let's say, inappropriate for our service, too low of an age, needed a little bit of additional support, we can also definitely help with information and referral and still bridging those connections with the community, even if it's not our immediate community. So I just wanted to quickly highlight the program that I work in. So I work in the YouthNet program, and we offer workshops and presentations to youth on mental health related topics. So it's very much an awareness program, an educational program, a decrease the stigma type of program. And it's really great to just, get the youth involved in terms of having these conversations and educating them, so that at least if they happen to recognize something in themselves or someone else, they might feel like they have a little bit of that knowledge to know when to seek help, or to even know some places to connect to as well. So even as I see some of you, on the line, I'm like, yeah, I've been mentioning and plugging some of your names out in the community. So it's just really nice to see all of you as well. So what I usually actually do is I always ask people to do mental health check-ins, and sometimes this can help you determine if this is a time that you want to reach out for help. You know, when it comes to our mental health, it is absolutely fluctuating. It is not, you know, black or white, cut and dry. We continuously fluctuate. So we always want to make sure that we're checking in with ourselves. And if we recognize that we are having any difficulty, we want to be able to reach out and seek some support. So if by chance anyone is not in the Peel or Dufferin community, then I encourage you to visit cmha.ca. CMHA is all across Canada, so you can find wherever your local branch is, and then you can inquire about the services that are offered for you in that area. And last but not least, if by chance you do want to follow us on social media, I encourage you to. We post some really great things in regards to mental health, what's happening in the community, really great motivating things about events. So if you're ever looking for ways to get more involved, or if you're looking for more mental health information, I encourage you to follow us. And that concludes me. So thanks everyone for giving me the space to share.
Thank you so much, Allison. Up next, we have Kids Help Phone, and then after that, we'll have one more.
Thanks, Lila. Last 4 minutes, I'm going to try to cram this in. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening. For everyone who's joining in today, I'm Ravina from Kids Help Phone, and I work as the manager for newcomer initiatives here. A little bit about our service. So our vision is mainly a future for every young person in Canada who will access the support they need in the way that they need it most. We're Canada's only 24/7 national support service for youth mental health. What that means is that we offer various e-mental health support services and resources via professional phone counseling, live chat. We also have a volunteer-led text-based support through our network of crisis responders. Apart from the e-support, we also offer information and referrals through our website tool, which is called Resources Around Me, so young people can find programs and resources closer to their homes. And we also offer a variety of different articles on our website, which offers a lot of educational material to different audiences and on different topics. Our services have been around for almost 30 years now, and it is completely confidential and anonymous, 24/7 and national. And the reason that we abide by the anonymity and confidentiality is to ensure that youth have an inclusive, non-judgmental and safe space to speak with us. That's not to say that if you might be better served by another organization. It's, you know, we have a network of referral organizations and partner organizations that our counselors can easily refer you out to if you feel that you'll be better supported by another organization. A huge part of my role, and I'm really excited to share this with you because it's kind of hot off the presses. So we've been offering English and French for the past 30 years, but what we're doing this year and very soon, so say early summer, we're extending our phone counseling services in Arabic for, just checking the time here, for our Arabic speaking residents in Canada. So I'm excited to share more about that. And with that, I'm at time. I'll be sharing my contact information in the chat, and I'll be here for the next little while if anyone has any questions or would like to connect with me directly. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Ravina. I believe last but not least, we may have Noura from the YWCA who may want to speak. Noura, I'm not sure if you were planning to say a few words about your work. We got about a minute left here if you'd like to tell us about your work.
All righty. So I'm also working with the YWCA Hamilton, just like Jamil, but I am part of a program that is a partnership with Spectrum Hamilton, which is a 2S LGBTQIA+ community organization that is for youth by youth, where we also work with mental health. The programs that I'm a part of and I'm privileged to be a part of are a combination of Join, which is called, which is our settlement service at the YWCA. and Spectrum Hamilton. We provide various services through the joint umbrella, such as employment services, workshops and networking, and highlight, plug in Indigenous connections through this program, as well as support for gender-based violence. And finally, there's the 2S LGBTQIA+ newcomer support program, which is where I come in. I just realized those are animated. So Spectrum, on the other hand, provides peer support through weekly check-ins. Folks are welcome to sign up through an entirely, so it's basically entirely based in the social network. And folks can just get checked in on by my colleagues. And then we work on community building, we advocate for the community, and we also hold fun recreational events such as our community kitchens. And that would be it for me today. I don't want to take up more time, but thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Noura, and thank you to all of our wonderful organizations that joined us today to highlight what they are doing during these times to support mental health and to support youth across the country and in their areas. We'll take a brief few-minute break before we get started here, 2 to 3 minutes. Stay with us and take a stretch if you need to, and then we'll get started officially. Okay, we are going to get started. So hello, everyone. I would like to again extend a warm welcome to Together Towards Recovery, the first youth-led conference in Canada during the pandemic that aims to discuss and help shape the path forward towards youth recovery during COVID-19. My name is Lila Mansour, and I will be your MC for today's event. The goal of today's event is to create a space for marginalized youth to share their perspective regarding their mental health challenges, their advocacy work, and the organizations they lead or support. We just completed a wonderful networking segment with various mental health organizations to learn about the work that they are doing to support youth mental health. We will also be highlighting the successes of the mental health campaign led by ABRAR while sharing the research findings and recovery plan recommendations. What makes this conference so unique is that it is the first national mental health conference in Canada that allows Canadian youth and Canadian mental health organizations to come together and begin discussing what the future will look like after the pandemic. We want to contribute to constructing an effective recovery plan that addresses the mental health needs and concerns of young people across the country. As I have mentioned, speakers, moderators, guests, and participants are joining us from all over Canada. Our speakers reside in many provinces, including British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, and Nova Scotia. Not only that, but our speakers come from diverse backgrounds, including youth of color, Black youth, Indigenous youth, youth in and from care, newcomers and refugees, and youth with disabilities, as well as youth from LGBTQ2S communities and other marginalized groups. We couldn't have organized this conference without the generous support of our various sponsors, including Laidlaw Foundation, the YWCA Hamilton, and our partners, Kids Help Phone, New Mentality, CMHA Peel Dufferin, Youth Gravity, BAM Collective, and YWCA Hamilton. Before I provide a brief description of the agenda for this evening, I would like to acknowledge the land that I am joining you from. Acknowledging territory shows recognition and respect for Indigenous people. Recognition and respect are essential elements of establishing healthy, reciprocal relationships with Indigenous people that are key to reconciliation. I am personally privileged to be a settler on the beautiful unceded territories of the Lheidli T'enneh, part of the Dakley or Carrier First Nations in northern British Columbia. I would also like to acknowledge that our guests, including our speakers and participants, are joining from diverse Indigenous territories, including treaty territories, unceded territories, and Inuit or Métis homelands across Turtle Island. As settlers, we acknowledge that we will forever be learning about the histories and people of this land, and we aim to be active participants in reconciliation and healing. So the plan for this evening is as follows. First, you'll get to meet the wonderful ABRAR, who is founder of her wonderful organization, also called ABRAR, and the conference In This Together. She's the leader of the In This Together campaign. We will have opening remarks from the Minister of Labor and the Minister of Health afterwards. And then following our opening remarks from ABRAR and the various ministers, we will have the research team present their mental health research findings. Last but not least, we'll have two panels, one with youth with lived experience and the other one with youth mental health professionals. In between the two panels, we'll have a wonderful body movement break so that you're not sitting for the entire duration of the evening. So before introducing ABRAR, there are just a few notices that I would like to highlight. Firstly, the information or experiences shared may be difficult or unsettling, and we strongly encourage you to take care of yourself and reach out for support should you need it. Should you require additional assistance or support, our research and content advisor, Dr. Omar Rida, is available. He is a certified psychiatrist and trauma expert. He is present here with us today, and should you need support, you may message him directly through the Zoom chat. If he happens to leave out the conference for any reason, please message ABRAR directly and she can support you as well. I would also like to note that this conference will be recorded. You're not obliged to open your camera or speak on the microphone, and you may change your Zoom name or photo to another alias if you wish. Thirdly, all attendees will be entered into our raffle for a chance to win one of many great prizes and giveaways. And last but not least, we will be posting our research link in the chat if you'd like to support the work of ABRAR. This includes the survey link for the mental health survey, as well as an opportunity to sign the open letter. So now, without further ado, it is my honor to introduce the extraordinary ABRAR Mishinshia, the In This Together leader and the founder of ABRAR Trauma and Mental Health Services. ABRAR Trauma and Mental Health Services is an organization striving to empower individuals to take charge of their mental health and overcome the difficulties that result from trauma and mental health illness. ABRAR is a mental health counselor with 6 years of extensive experience in mental health and trauma counseling. She currently lives in Hamilton, Ontario, and she is a member of the CCPA which is the Canadian Counseling and Psychotherapy Association, UNHCR, and she works with children and youth and their families to treat trauma and related mental health disorders using trauma-informed frameworks, including CBT, CBT-TF, and methodology combined with art therapy. She advocated for children's and women's mental health during the crisis in Syria. In Canada, Abrar has continued passionately to work as a mental health counselor for people who have experienced trauma, and her work is mainly surrounding trauma-informed frameworks, especially with regards to children, youth, and their families through different agencies. She advocates for the promotion of mental health and empowerment for those who have experienced mental health issues and for those who have faced traumatization by events. And she is very, very passionate about supporting marginalized individuals, newcomers, refugees, immigrants, minorities, and people in crisis-affected areas. No introduction can do justice to the incredible individual that Abrar is, and it is for this reason that I am so honored to present to you Abrar.
Thank you so much, Lila, for such a lovely introduction. I'm so flattered, and I'm so happy to have you with your beautiful spirit emceeing tonight. Salam marhaban, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you're gonna have, you already had a wonderful day so far. I'm joining you today from Hamilton, which is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Natural, Oro-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. We are so proud to be hosting the first ever youth-led National Mental Health Conference during the pandemic to discuss the post-pandemic mental health recovery plan. And I want to take this moment to acknowledge my privilege, the privilege of having a voice. I know how it feels to not have one. We stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Palestine, as it is greatly painful to watch their suffering while much of the world remains silent. More than 58 innocent children have died in the past week, and they are merely seen as numbers and are being honored and not being honored or remembered. As a young Syrian growing up during a crisis, it is emotionally devastating to watch others experiencing helplessness and hopelessness. And I'm sure many of you feel the same way too. Furthermore, I want to dedicate today's event to these lost souls who endured tremendous pain and trauma, but remained steadfast in their resilience. We at the Ends Together will always stand with the voiceless. I also want to dedicate today's event to those who are struggling with mental health issues, and we pray for your healing and strength. We hope that throughout this conference, you find optimism, support, and courage. I also want to thank the conference planning team for their tireless efforts, put towards coordinating and organizing everything for today. You are amazing. Now, let's start by walking you through our campaign journey and what we have accomplished so far. I think we're gonna be sharing a screen. Okay, so the campaign started with an idea I had for a youth support group back in August 2020, as I strongly felt the need for early intervention. I shared my ideas with Amani and Rabia, who are presenting today, and they immediately were on board. They were both very passionate and interested in volunteering to run our first youth support group for BIPOC and newcomers youth in October 2020. I am so fortunate to have had their support throughout this journey. Also, thank you for being the first and believing in bringing this idea to life. I would also like to thank my friends who supported us in the creation of designs, marketing, and web development. After we successfully delivered that support group and observed the huge need for mental health support during the pandemic, we realized youth were sharing concerns about what comes next. They were concerned about transferring back to the new normal. There, I decided to launch this campaign And we were lucky to have a team of 18 young students and professionals joining and sharing the same passion to inspire the action to create a mental health post-pandemic recovery plan. No, I think, yeah, before, okay. We launched the campaign at the beginning of February with the great support from other organizations, and it has been quite a journey since then. Here are some two quotes that have been stated our campaign. I'm gonna start with the Kids Help Fund one. Kids Help Fund is pleased to endorse the Invest Together campaign, as together we amplify and support the voices of marginalized youth. Thank you. And next, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has been distributed unevenly, laying disproportionate way on youth marginalized by colonialism, racism, catastrophe, ableism, and other forms of oppression. In this Together, a campaign by young people, for young people, calls for an equitable mental health recovery plan that centers the well-being of marginalized youth. We stand in solidarity with the young people leading this crucial work. Thank you, Emily Williams, the Education and Outreach Coordinator at the First Nation Child and Family Caring Society in Canada. And it has been quite a successful journey. I'm incredibly proud of what we have accomplished, alhamdulillah, and I'm so sure we can all attest to how proud we are. And we are so thrilled to have all of you join our journey. We have a great passion to achieve our goals, which is raise awareness on COVID-19 impact on mental health for marginalized population, for marginalized youth. Promote accessibility in mental health care of marginalized youth. Highlight the importance of early intervention as a stepped care approach for mental health care during the pandemic. Create a multi-sector, which is the more important goal, is create a multi-sector, multi-service post-pandemic mental health recovery plan for Canada that it is inclusive for marginalized youth. You might wonder what's the importance of achieving these goals. And is it an immediate urgency? Well, I'll leave that to our research team to give more in-depth answers, which gonna fascinate you. But I will share with you an article that was published earlier in April about a 13 years old young girl who tried to take her own life last November in Hamilton, where I live, and was hospitalized at the McMaster Children's Hospital. McMaster Children's Hospital reports a steady increase of youth in crisis since the pandemic began. The number of youth admitted for medical support after suicide attempts has tripled over the 4-month period compared to last year. And I want to share what the mother of this girl said, calling out service provider, asking them to do something. She said, I'm of the opinion that I'm done talking about it. Let's do something. Let's get funding so that these children can get services. So there's not 6 months long or a year long wait lists, because they cannot last that long unsupported, which absolutely I agree with her. And that what motivate us. It's heartbreaking to read that such articles, but also that what makes us going to make the change and create a better plan for youth and children. In order to achieve our goals, actually, we had three components of activities: the research, where they're gonna be sharing their primarily finding today, and the team produced a research survey and ran a focus group. Number 2, we had service where we wanted to hold ourselves responsible and give back to the community. We successfully delivered 2 mental health workshops. The first one was delivered in support from CMHA Peel Dufferin by the amazing Alison Brice. I think she's in the space. Thank you. Second one was in support and partnership with an emcee Center and the University of Toronto. The last component of our activity is the advocacy, which is indicated in our bulletin, which gained great support from many national and local organizations, including UNICEF Canada, Children Mental Health Ontario, YWCA Canada, Laidlaw Foundation. I think all of them, or majority of them, are present, and thank you so much for such believing us, and had 342 people endorsing it. These are some of our accomplishments, and actually all that was done on 100% volunteer basis. So yeah, that was amazing. Also, we were featured in Toronto Star and at the National JAG.org Summit 2021. And now we are hosting our first US National Mental Health Conference, which is so exciting. Let me share with you now some of our beautiful moments throughout the journey before we start acknowledging the team and the supporter. So you can see the first one, 3 of us, that's the beginning. And after that, that was our first team meeting. You have, after that, our first workshop. And after that, the mic drop that we did an art event for youth, and it was amazing. And next slide, please. And yeah, and also we had a meeting with Minister Tassi, and we had a meeting with the MPP, the NDB MPPs, and it was a great, I think they are here. Thank you so much. It was a great meeting. And we also had a second workshop, and I think that's pretty much. And the last one, the dry run of the conference, I did include it. We had a great dry run. Anyways, so I want to now to get you to know that team behind the scene, the great team, which I'm incredibly grateful to be part of that team. I'm going to start with Steffi Ahmed. She is a research assistant. Rabi Ahmed, she is the research team co-leader. You're going to be seeing her today. And Amani Hanafi, the research team leader. Ayasaid, research assistant. Razan and Samara, she was the marketing team leader. Fatma Badri, she is also the research assistant. Sahel Sabuni, he's our animator. Norhan Ahmed, she's our event coordinator. Rodan Masoud, she's our video editor. Wafa Dahous, she's our designer who did design everything for this event, for this conference. Thank you, Wafa. Mariam Ahmed, she's also event planner. Faiza Zahed, she's in the marketing team. Zainab Gil, she's going to be our MC tomorrow, and she is also research assistant. Jannat Akbar, she is the event coordinator and with so much effort towards today. Alexandra Anis, she is our French content creator. Because I love owning the team, especially who put great effort. Okay, next we have our ambassadors, our great ambassador who represent other equity groups. We have Chanice McAnuff, Jenna Robert, Noor Fadel, Habun Ali, Doug Saruka, Abir Pamuk, Carly Tripp, and Shabnam. And they are amazing. Thank you so much for being our ambassador. It was great having you. And absolutely not last but not least, thank you to our advisor who were always there with their input, advice, and resources. And we are so grateful to have your support, Erwan Alman and Dr. Amar Rida. I think you are in the place. Thank you so much for being great advisors. And absolutely to our partners for being great allies along the journey from the bottom of our heart. Thank you. Seriously, like everyone, it was quite a journey having you along with us. Absolutely. And lastly, our supporter. So our supporter for their tremendous support, JAG.org, Boys and Girls Club, Children Mental Health Ontario, Children First Canada, the Council of Agencies Serving South Asian, Laidlaw Foundation, We Matter, OACAS, First Nation Child and Family Caring Society of Canada, NMC Cultural Center, the Refugee Center, IG Vital Health, Bridging Borders, Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion, YWCA Canada, Youth in Care Canada. And thank you for everyone who were great supporter to our journey. I hope I did not miss anyone. It's a great work having your support. Thank you so much. Hope I have not missed anyone. Yeah. Apologies if I did. And lastly, let me wrap up my presentation, sharing with you with you our heartwarming, inspiring message and call to action and what we hope to achieve. That's the voice. Can you share the voice, please?
Sorry, 1 second.
We may be physically distant, but we're not alone. We are compassionate,
motivated,
resourceful, and we have demands.
We ask our elected leaders and the Government of Canada to immediately work towards ensuring early intervention and step-care type models for mental health services during the pandemic.
We need to establish a post-pandemic mental health recovery plan.
And we need to ensure that this plan is informed by and co-created with young people.
des jeunes compatissants.
Shabab and Matansi, just like us.
The plan must prioritize the well-being of marginalized young people who've been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic and are too often left behind.
Yes, for support and funding for grassroots, community-based mental health services.
There is an economic recovery plan, but what about our mental health recovery?
We will not be left behind.
We are in this together.
Nous sommes ensemble.
So after this heartwarming message and our call to action, I want to again thank you so much for joining us today and welcome you again, and hope you find our conference valuable and enjoyable. Before I hand it back to Lila, I want to give special shout out and thanks to these amazing hardworking ladies, Janat Akbar and Norhan Ahmed, for coordinating the conference, staying up late at night to make sure everything goes smoothly. And we wouldn't be here without you. Without your tireless efforts. Special thank you to our tech support, Alexander and Faiza, led by Mohammed Bizdai. And to our conference designer, Wafa. More importantly, also special thank you to our sponsors for this conference, for their generosity, Laidlaw Foundation and YWCA Hamilton, for our raffle sponsor, Ellis Waslot, and Eventbrite donors. Thank you so much. And to our partners, absolutely, as always, Kids Have Fun, New Mentality, PAM Collective, Youth Gravity, and CMHA Peel Dufferin. Thank you so much. And we are honored to welcome these amazing government representative. I'm gonna start, I don't know who is here, but I'm gonna start. Okay, so I think we have Jennifer Anderson, Manager Youth Policy and Partnership Unit at Public Health of Canada. Okay, and we have Monique Tyler, MBB Hamilton Mountain, and the NDB Critique for Health and Addiction. We have Laura Mia Linda, the MBB Scarborough, the MBB Kitchener Center, and the NDB Critique for College and University, and the Interior-ism. I think, are we spotlighting them? Okay. Perfect. Oh, good to see you all. And absolutely. And okay, Dolly Begum, MBB Scarborough Southwest, NDB Critique, Citizenship, Foreign Credential and Immigration Service. Faisal Hassan, MBB York Southwestern, the NDB Critique for Youth Opportunities. And thank you so much for joining us today. We're so happy to have you here. And I think Faisal is here too. You can unmute them if you want. Thank you. We're so sorry because the time is limited. So happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. And lastly, we have a message from the Honorable Minister of Health, Patty Hadru, which will be shared by the Parliamentary Secretary, MB Jen O'Connell. I'm gonna share that with you. 1 minute. Yep.
Good evening.
Okay.
Thank you for that introduction and for the opportunity to be here via video. I wish to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. I'd like to begin by thanking that In This Together campaign for hosting this important and timely conference on youth mental health. We all know that it is important to take care of our mental health, and to do this, we need to understand the unique factors that contribute to mental health issues and the supports that exist to help us. So many Canadians experience mental health issues. This is particularly true for groups that face marginalization. These groups include, but are not limited to, Indigenous, Black Canadians, and other racialized Canadians, LGBTQ2S+ communities, and youth. The COVID-19 pandemic has made things worse. As we all know, youth is another group that is susceptible to mental health issues, particularly during the pandemic. Since the pandemic began, a higher proportion of youth, 44%, report that their mental health has worsened compared to older populations at 39%. Diverse youth also face additional challenges that can affect mental health issues. For example, LGBTQ2S+ youth experience higher rates of victimization, trauma, and post-traumatic stress disorder compared to heterosexual cisgender youth and adults. LGBTQ2S+ youth are also more likely to report experience thoughts of suicide and suicide-related behavior than their non-LGBTQ2S+ peers. The Government of Canada is working to help Canadians in these groups in particular. Pre-pandemic, we already had programs in place that continue to operate during this time. But there is a mental health of Black Canadians fund. This fund supports culturally focused approaches and projects improving mental health and its determinants for Black Canadians, including Black youth. Similarly, the Mental Health Promotion Innovation Fund invests in community-based projects to promote positive mental health for diverse children and youth, including LGBTQ2S+, Indigenous, and newcomer populations, as well as their caregivers. To help support Canadians through the pandemic, we launched the Wellness Together Canada portal in mid-April of 2020. The portal is unique in that it provides free 24/7 and bilingual short-term mental health and substance use support for all Canadians. It's a one-stop shop that includes wellness, self-assessments and tracking, self-guided courses, peer group support, group coaching, online community of support, and counseling by text or phone. Phone counseling sessions are available in both official languages as well as 200 other languages and dialects. I encourage you to check out the portal. It is pretty cool and a great resource. Through the portal, children and youth ages 5 to 29 are able to access Kids Help Phone, which provides online phone and text-based support to young people who are in crisis or dealing with mental health issues. We are investing additional money in the Kids Help Phone so it can continue to help youth in need, especially during the pandemic. This resource is also available to you 24/7 when you need it. And we look towards a future when we need to consider the long-term impact of the pandemic on the mental health of Canadians, and particularly those who face marginalization. That is why Budget 2021 invested $100 million to support innovative mental health interventions for populations disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. Our government is also supporting the development of a trauma and COVID-19 specific PTSD stream of mental health programming. Finally, we recognize that all Canadians need access to appropriate, timely, and easily accessible mental health services now and into the future. Therefore, we will be developing national service standards on mental health and substance use. These standards will help make it easier for all Canadians to access the mental health services they need. Ultimately, we recognize the importance of mental health for all Canadians, and especially youth and/or those who experience marginalization. We are working to support Canadians every step of the way, including pre-pandemic, during this trying time, and into the future. I'm extremely proud of all of the work that we are doing to continue to support the mental health of all Canadians. Thank you once again for the opportunity to speak this evening. I wish you all the best for the rest of this conference. Have a good evening.
What a heartwarming message from the minister. Thank you so much. And well, I'm gonna hand it back to Lila, our MC. Please take it from there.
Thank you so much, Abrar. You and your team are spectacular and have accomplished so much. So an applause and clap for you for your hard, tremendous work over the last couple of months. So now I'd like to introduce the research team to present their results. We have Rabia and Amani, who are the co-leaders of the Abrar Research Committee. Just a little introduction to both of the wonderful ladies. Rabia Ahmed has graduated from the University of Toronto with a bachelor's in health science, I'm assuming, in mental health and biology, but do correct me, Rabia, if I'm mistaken. She has great experience providing mental health support through her role as an emergency first responder on her university's emergency response groups. She is passionate about improving equitable access to healthcare and mental health services. We also have Amani Hanafi. Amani graduated from the University of Ottawa with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and Health Studies, and she is currently a graduate student studying behavioral sciences. As a former policy analyst with the Public Health Agency of Canada, she promoted community action programs for vulnerable children and their families in over 3,000 communities across Canada. Her advocacy continues to actively strengthen discussions surrounding community and mental health. Both of you are wonderful, wonderful and accomplished young women. So thank you for presenting these results.
Thank you so much for that. That was a very perfect. You know what, all of this and the research we are going to present, this entire journey would not be possible without the rest of my research team. So a quick shout out to Shafia, Fatima, Zainab, Jannat, Aya. We put it together, but the content wouldn't have been possible without you guys. So thank you so much. Without further ado, I'll get right into it. In terms of our research survey, let me provide a bit of a background for our research folks. I know you guys like to know how it came together. So in terms of our purpose, we started this with the intent of trying to understand how COVID-19 has impacted youth, and specifically perhaps youth from marginalized populations. And more generally, we wanted to really understand what barriers exist now and will continue to exist after the pandemic, right? If anything, whatever existed before was just exacerbated. So we wanted to understand what those barriers to accessing help were. In terms of our methodology, it was really just random sampling, opportunity sampling, where we shared the survey on our social medias and through our partners through emails. Anybody between the ages of 15 to 29 was able to answer the questions. And then we also had, we did collect some identifying information such as, ethnicity, occupation, where you are located, but at no point were we linking that to their name, email address, or any other identifying feature of that nature. Of course, they had the ability to withdraw at any point or leave any of the questions blank. So it was completely voluntary. In terms of our research design, we did have 35 questions, a mixture of both open responses and short answered Likert scale questions. They were divided into 5 major categories. So first we had the personal information, of course, the demographic data. Number 2 were the feedback and recommendation section that was very open-ended. And we just really wanted to hear everybody's narratives and voices. And we didn't want to limit in any way. So they could write as long of a response as they wanted. It was very fun reading through them. For the self-assessment portion, we just wanted to get an understanding of where they are in terms of their well-being and mental health right now in comparison to, say, 9 to 12 months ago. Coping challenges, we were trying to understand what's the biggest challenge that people are facing right now and in what domain. For support and services, these were really trying to figure out which services are accessed most by youth and if there are any shortcomings or barriers to those services at the moment. All right. Moving forward, we have Amani. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So as noted in the purpose of our research, there are several current gaps in resources and services available still to marginalized youth in Canada. So our goal is aimed at tackling a few recommendations that were already suggested by previous research when it came to the benefits of upstream early mental health interventions. So these goals that we present here today are structured around supporting possible efficiencies in mental health care. So the first one being learning more about heightened service gaps that continue to arise because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The second goal is to promote accessibility of mental health care for marginalized youth. The third goal is to highlight the importance of early intervention as a stepped care approach for mental health care during the pandemic. And lastly, is just to create a multi-sector or multi-service post-pandemic mental health recovery plan for Canada that is inclusive still for marginalized youth. So here we have a few demographics to begin. So our statistical demographics presented a significant perception of marginalized youth by age and as well by ethnic origin. So as you see here on the left of the screen, most of the participants are between the age of 15 to 25 or 24, sorry. And on the right of the screen, we have a good representation as well for many diverse ethnic groups. So as well, we have youth occupation, and it's another significant finding that included youth's occupational statistics. So many youth here did appear to be balancing a work-life responsibility. So moreover, some of them reported working part-time alongside their education. And we can also see additionally that, we might be able to draw a possible lack of unemployment during the pandemic that was available to youth.
Thank you, Amani. So this right here is just a word cloud, really represents the 15 most common themes that came across all of our qualitative data. So you'll notice things like mental health professional, peer support program, virtual counseling, generic treatment plans, inadequate training, guaranteed income. So all of these themes really came across repetitively in the responses. But moving forward, these 6 themes represented on this slide came up repeatedly in all of our quantitative and qualitative data. We categorized them into these 6 major groups that we felt really encompassed all the responses. So first of all, we had the major issue of inaccessibility. This covers both the fact that many people didn't know where to actually get services. And second of all, they were deterred from actually seeking help because of the long wait times that actually come when you first make the decision, I need help, right? Unfortunately, both through our survey responses and through a focus group we conducted, we repeatedly got the feedback that many times when you're in distress and you go seek help, you're told, especially at universities or many times high schools don't even have this available, but through universities, you're told, okay, the next available appointment is a week from now, right? Or even a month from now. And if you think about that, that's really not effective. And linked to that is financial barriers. It was a major concern. 98% of our participants actually reported that they had challenges receiving long-term affordable care. Even if services were provided for free initially, they actually, for it to continue past, say, 5-10 sessions or a couple of months, they had to start paying that, and they didn't have the funds to do that. Again, there was a major concern of lack of cultural competency, especially when it comes to youth from marginalized communities or minority groups, where they felt that many times they stopped seeking help because they weren't able to connect with their service provider. The feedback we received that if service providers were more educated on culture, language, religious, or ethnic differences, they would understand the context of the people seeking care. And then obviously the care you provide becomes more effective that way because you can leverage their context to actually provide that help. And because of that, many of the treatment people felt was actually ineffective. Or if it was effective, it would only last very short term when they can see somebody for help, but they couldn't manage that on their own later on. Again, there's a major problem still exists of stigma. There's a stigma of seeking care, but there's also a stigma where people felt that if others, their colleagues, their coworkers, their bosses found out that they needed special accommodation, that they would be treated differently. So that was a major reason they didn't actually seek help. In terms of academic support, of course, a lot of the mental health concerns, especially in students right now, are due to an increased workload, as they have less access to teachers or people that they cannot directly speak to and help, get help from. We have more stress levels. 90% of actually our participants reported they were feeling isolated. And related to that, they were provided the feedback that in that sense, peer support programs would be really helpful, because you know, in that you can actually talk to peers who are going through the same thing, and if they have further training, they can actually help you based on their experiences. And then in the next slide, these next series of slides actually just highlight some of the major quotes that came out of the qualitative data. We wanted to highlight a few that aligned with these categories. So here we have, in one participant mentioned that there isn't a lot of, you know, I guess advertisement or common knowledge in the general public of where they can get help that's not based on a crisis line, right? Not everybody, when they first identify the need for help, are at a crisis point. We hope, in fact, we prefer it if they seek help early on, but unfortunately, most of the services that are emphasized and you know, advertised are those crisis lines. And then, of course, there's the factor of physical accessibility too. Many who don't live in city centers don't have a lot of care providers available in their area. So they'd have to commute long distances, take significant portion of their day just to get help. And, you know, just a small thing I want to note here is that we can really see that in some ways, the pandemic and the virtual care helped in that, increasing that accessibility. And moving forward, we'd recommend that we keep these virtual services available for people who are still not able to access them physically. And the next one, we have ineffective treatment. Unfortunately, many unfortunate stories that came out of our research where people really who needed help in the most difficult situation didn't get it. When we mentioned, several people mentioned the fact that, you know, when the call time ends, when it's the end of the call, it just ends suddenly, so they don't have time to really debrief or wrap up. So I think further training would really help with that. And then the other concern was a lot of people felt that their needs wouldn't be addressed until they hit a level of severity. So if they actually went and sought service because they started to feel the issues arising, it wouldn't actually be addressed or taken seriously until it was a point where they said they were harmed to themselves or others. Financial barriers, of course, this was our biggest barrier that was reported. You know, in a very heartbreaking thing that somebody in our focus group shared, that they had a friend diagnosed with bipolar disorder in university. After the diagnosis, she had 5 free sessions through the university. They helped a lot, but then she couldn't continue further because she would have had to pay, and she didn't have those funds being a student. And if you can imagine having the diagnosis of bipolar, how much it could affect your life, and not having support for that, how detrimental that is. And each time you, of course, have to go to a new service provider because your free sessions ran out, you have to open up all a trauma again. You have to open up, you know, be vulnerable to a completely different person. And that can be really anxiety provoking. Perfect, Imani, take it away.
So another valuable discussion revolved around fear of disclosure due to lack of empathy between healthcare providers and clients. And this resulted in discontinued use of services for some of our participants as well. So, you know, a lot of them also explained how this mirrored many of their experiences and perceptions from within their own institutions, such as their schools or workplace. So a recommendation that was made countless of times was to, you know, destabilize stigmatization surrounding mental health and to create programs that would be beneficial such as training, for instance, and all other factors of communication. So the next one is lack of cultural competency. So in these two statements, they highlighted key components about practitioners' approaches to their services. And sometimes when it comes to culture sensitivity, it can be neglected and there is a lack of awareness. Thus, it leads to a lot of inadequate care and comfort for clients to feel safe. So these two statements do highlight in many experiences where practitioners impose, you could say, ethnocentric norms or biased cultural understandings with no solution-based approaches to therapy. And last, we have academic and peer support. So again, we see here that youth reported an increased difficulty during their work-life balance, an increase in their workload, and mandatory attendance was reported to deteriorate motivation and mental health to participate in their academics. Additionally, post-secondary students actually explain how, they're able to refer to their professors for academic accommodation services. However, when it came to transitioning into the workforce, the respondents showed that there was a lack of seeking help due to constraints such as no paid leave or stress leave, that a lot of internships actually don't offer a lot of youth transitioning from within the institution itself and when they're leaving. So program restructuring and peer support programs were a few suggestions made by some of the respondents.
So here, this really summarized both the quantitative and qualitative section. We had an overwhelming message, so much so that I was concerned that some of the answers had gotten repeated. I went back, checked, they were individual responses just with so much similarity, where more than 90% of our participants actually reported having very low energy, just living day by day, feeling lonely, isolated, not knowing who to reach out to. Many reported not having proper sleep, low energy levels, loss of appetite, or unhealthy eating habits as a coping mechanism. And all the service providers here today, I think you can attest to the fact that this will likely have very long-standing effects, and it's something we need to keep in mind as we transition to in-person learning, schooling, and work, that these feelings don't just go away overnight, and we need to keep this in mind.
Yeah, and as well, in terms of the quantitative data that we collected, the survey results also supported these challenges that were associated with the pandemic. So you could see here that 66% and 80% of respondents actually expressed challenges associated with the pandemic, and even expressed like an increased challenge since the beginning of March 2020. So these are domains where individuals on the survey reported various coping challenges. So you'll notice a significant impact in the areas, especially of social isolation, distractions at home, anxiety and or stress as a result of the pandemic, and lastly, mental health related concerns.
Sorry, where do we go from here, right? We have these findings, we're hearing a lot of people, what do we do with this information? We're really calling for all of you here today, all of the people supporting us, as well as the government officials, service providers, caregivers here, to focus on these are the three main focus points that came out. Number one, we need to increase affordability and accessibility of services. We have a lot of campaigns aimed at encouraging people to seek help. Well, that's really ineffective if the barriers to that help remain in place, right? So we need to encourage, reduce those barriers such as finances, right? Make care more affordable. We always say mental health is health, but when it comes to financing that, when it comes to our healthcare plans, it's not treated equally. And we need to start doing that. We need to have guaranteed long-term care available for those who need it. Number two, very importantly, we need to invest in ethnocultural services and providers. More than 85% of our participants who actually stopped seeking care was due to this reason, because they couldn't make that connection to their service provider. They didn't feel heard, and so they stopped, right? That can be really detrimental to anybody seeking help. So we really encourage government officials, policymakers to invest in grassroots community-based organizations and providers who can understand the concerns of the community they serve. And this leads to the third point of providing holistic approach. In psychology, in our medical field, we understand that mental health is amalgamation of factors such as, your physical health, your environmental and social factors. Yet we continue to provide care that's very generic and focuses on perhaps just one of those arenas, right? So we need to make care that reflects the actual root of the problem, right? What that means not just investing in what's the easiest option out there, right? Just invest in the major crisis line. We definitely need funding for that, but we really need to invest in the root of the problem. We need to focus on school programs. We need to have community providers. We need to have more mental health professionals available within schools and universities so that students can get immediate access to those services when they need them. Currently having, 1-2 guidance counselors for an entire school is really not going to cut it when it comes to students and their mental health.
So based on the recommendations, several future directions can actually continue to support the lead of research and professional healthcare development when approaching the mental health of marginalized youths. So if you are taking a future action plan surrounding the mental health of marginalized youth, and they would be benefited through addressing them through a sex gender-based analysis lens. So this would actually ensure that health research in Canada leads to something of a sound science and reliable evidence that effectively addresses biology, but as well as sociocultural and gender and other identity factors. So this is really key when highlighting diverse groups and the differences between their experiences when they interact with healthcare services. Another concern that would be interesting to see as an approach is a modified step care model that can provide healthcare professionals with a framework for care when it comes to individuals with significant mental health concerns, that use limited resources. So essentially, there'd be different levels of intensity depending on the client's needs. And lastly, this is a recommendation for health professionals as well, and that would be to kind of alter the lens that we use when we understand trauma, and try to see marginalized youth exclusively not through that lens, but provide them a need to be able to discern when youth need to work through traumatic experiences. This would help them gain more benefit from them and develop more practical strategies when managing actually their transition from youth and adulthood as well.
Perfect. And that concludes our presentation. I just want to thank from the bottom of my heart everybody who has, supported and made this possible. All my research team, all of our partners who, publicized the survey and helped us in the recruitment effort. I just want to highlight the fact that this is a preliminary report, meaning we just chose the 95 initial respondents that we had to do to present this data for this conference, but our research is not closed now. We are aiming for up to 500, a sample size of about 500. So we'd love your help if you could, share the survey within the groups that you represent, or friends, colleagues, network, just so we can have data that actually reflects the need of youth. And of course, the larger, those in research will know, the larger the sample size, the more, conclusive those statements can be, and more we can actually understand and analyze. So thank you so much again for being here. We really appreciate it. Oh, and before we sign off, I did want to say that we will be releasing an official report when we conclude the survey. So with the 500 participants, we will write an official report, hopefully by the beginning of fall. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you so much, Rabia and Amani, for sharing the primary findings of your research. The results are incredibly intriguing and I know very, very valuable, and they should be used to help guide policymaking and decision-making across the country as we move forward after COVID-19. So thank you for your hard work. So up next, we have our very first panel one out of two. And so joining us for this panel are youth with lived experience. So I will introduce our moderator for this panel, and then they will introduce the speakers. So we have Chanice McAnuff. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Chanice. She is our moderator for this first panel. She is the founder and CEO of Project Outsiders. She is a passionate advocate for children and youth in and from the child welfare system. Chanice is a member of numerous committees, including the Youth for Change Steering Committee at the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Society, the Child Welfare Political Action Committee, and is a board member for York Region Children's Aid Society. Among many other things, she has experience as well in consulting, event coordinating, and public speaking. She is currently pursuing her bachelor's degree in psychology at McMaster University with plans of getting her master's in public policy. Chanice is also, as I have mentioned, the founder and CEO of Project Outsider, a youth-led social organization. Thank you, Chanice. I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I am so incredibly honored to be here today. The event so far has been so enlightening and insightful, and I'm very honored. I just wanted to first of all say thank you everyone who has been able to attend today's event so far. This has been so incredibly transformative. The fact that we have a youth-led organization, a conference to talk about mental health issues across Canada. It's really great to be here today. And the research the presentation that we have just collected in regards to the research has been so incredibly insightful and thorough and elaborative. And I'm very curious to see how that relationship ties into our first panel discussion today with lived experience, with youth who have lived experience with mental health. And I want to definitely get into it. So in today's discussion, we want to hear from youth with lived experience with mental health and allow them to share their perspective with the public and the government on how they have been facing current mental health issues during the pandemic, and what has been some of the barriers, the gaps that should have been in place to provide them with some tools to cope through this crisis. Not only that, but we also want to hear what their recommendations are for our post-pandemic mental health recovery plan. So I would like to go ahead and introduce today's panel. In today's panel, we have a great line of speakers, advocates from all across Canada, and we are honored to have each and every single one of them here today. Joining us, we have Helena Kevorkian, Shab, Steffi Arkilander, and Morrisseau. I will be doing a quick introduction for each guest so you get to know them a little bit better. But our first guest, or our first panelist, is Helena Kevorkian. Born and raised in Aleppo, Syria, Helena is a UTSC student completing mental health studies and philosophy majors and a biomedical ethics minor. During the Syrian civil war, she was a faculty of education student volunteering their time within the administrative body. Helena also worked as a research assistant at the National Union of Syrian Students and served as a psychological first aid worker for displaced youth and female adults. She developed PTSD and addiction due to the repeated trauma and struggled with bipolar disorder since adolescence, but refused treatment for decades because of cultural stigma. She is now open to her experiences and sharing them with us to reduce the stigma and break these stereotypes. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm excited to hear more about this. Our next panelist is Shab. Shab is from Afghanistan, or is an Afghan Canadian, published poet, activist, mental health advocate, public speaker, and spoken word artist. Growing up, she faced a lot of trauma and leading to chronic depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Currently working with a Toronto-based youth organization called Youth Speak. Shab is trying to break the narrative by using her public speaking and spoken word skills to raise awareness about youth mental health, particularly in marginalized and newcomer communities. Next, we have Steffi Arkilander. Steffi is a recent health science graduate from McMaster University. As someone with lived experience with mental health illness, they are very passionate about breaking down barriers associated with accessing mental health care. In their free time, Steffi enjoys drawing, baking, and building plants or buying plants that she cannot afford, and honored to have her here as well. And last but not least, we have Morrisseau. Marshall is a First Nation Métis advocate, currently residing in Brandon, Manitoba, and attending university. Marshall is studying a Bachelor's of Arts degree for the purpose of pursuing law. Marshall is involved with community organizations such as Brandon Bear Clan Patrol, where he coordinates a youth mock patrol. This opportunity lets him build positive relationships in the community, educate future generations about harm reduction philosophies and traditional teachings. Marshall also takes part in the We Matter campaign as a national ambassador of hope, delivering messages of hope, culture, and strength for Indigenous youth. In the beginning of 2020, Marshall attended the United States Drug and Crime Commission as a youth delegate, and he is now involved in the International Youth Initiative to help develop and deliver drug prevention strategies. They're now working in Thunderbird Partnership Foundation to develop youth-led projects. Thank you for every one of you guys for attending today's panel's discussion. I think it's going to be really great, especially following such a thorough presentation. I believe we will find a lot of correlations. And I want to go right into the questions, but I want to let each and every one of you guys know that you have 2 minutes to answer each question. And let's get into the first one. Also, I want to preference anybody who wants to also follow along or respond to the same question. I will ask you to just raise your hand, and I'll try to go in the order which I see. So since the onset of the pandemic, what impact do you believe it had on youth mental health well-being? And I would actually want to hear Marshall's first response, then we'll follow along after that.
Thanks for the introduction. I think the beginning of the pandemic, we definitely saw an increase of substance use as well as other problems that arisen, because the number one risk factor for youth in problematic substance use is not having access to an education. So that lack of school and being in programming and all those other things that kind of keep youth involved in curriculum really had an impact on their mental health and well-being, as well as social isolation. Youth are just greatly influenced by their peer groups, and it really helps them develop their identity and more so their own well-being. So that isolation definitely took a toll. I know from my own personal experience, not being able to connect with other individuals on a regular basis had a huge effect on my mental health and well-being, because I believe as people, we were just naturally, we were just social beings. So seeing young people go through this pandemic and being isolated was very difficult to watch, because we know that a lot of youth would have or have fallen through the cracks because of that.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. I personally hear like a lot of stories from youth in care themselves. The impact of isolation has heavily impacted them in negative ways. Finding supports can be hard as well, but thank you so much for sharing that. Does anybody else want to respond in following Marshall? Helena?
Yep, so I could add on what Marshall said about addiction. So I'm just gonna share this real quickly. So this is one of the studies that was conducted in 2020. So we had 21% increase
of alcohol consumption in young adults between the ages of 18 to 34. And most of them, like nearly 57%, reported experience of lack of routine, which is detrimental for mental health. And 44% reported stress and 20% reported boredom. Now, 35 to 54-year-olds have reported 25% increase in alcohol consumption. And that age group is essential because a lot of us have parents in that age group because our communities have children young. So for those of us who are recovering from addiction or dealing with addiction, it's really hard to choose between sitting with our parents who are having a glass of wine at night to release tension, or just keep isolating in our bedroom. That kind of makes things a bit more difficult and keeps dealing with relapse more challenging.
Does anybody else want to follow? Steffi?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the challenges that youth have been facing. I think like as a student for 4 years at a university, doing on a whole year of school online has definitely been difficult for many people, and not being able to stay physically connected. I know I was a peer tutor for a first year class just this past year, and like those students haven't been able to like engage with each other at all except through Zoom or through other virtual platforms. So that's definitely been something that's been difficult for many. Just like a little content warning for sexual violence. As a survivor, I know that survivors of domestic abuse and sexual violence also have been facing a lot of consequences for being stuck at home, in the case that they're stuck with someone that an unsafe household, or they're living with their abuser. That's definitely been like a large impact on many people, and I think that goes unnoticed a lot of the time. For me personally, I've also like lost a lot of hope looking forward to things, and like my mental health challenges have definitely been at an all-time high during just like these isolating times. So yeah, there's definitely been like a large impact.
I definitely agree with that point. Typically, these programs at universities and community groups essentially are almost an escape for a lot of people to get out of these households. And it's hard when you can't go anywhere. So only imagine the kind of impact that it has dramatically over the past year. Shab, did you want to add anything onto that?
Yes, Chanice. So as you mentioned earlier, for me, personally, I have PTSD, depression, and chronic anxiety.
Yeah.
I am an Afghan Canadian, so I find a lot of people here who are hyphenated Canadians can relate to similar trauma that they've faced. I share a lot of stress and responsibility in my home, provide constant emotional support. I find during the pandemic, to echo what you just said, I no longer had the escape from all of that trauma at home, trying to provide that support constantly. So I felt so emotionally drained. And content warning. So there, I am a victim of sexual abuse, childhood sexual abuse. So for me, a lot of triggers from that trauma were triggered. I'm being redundant now. So basically being at home, I felt stuck all the time. I felt like I was back in that trauma and I couldn't leave. I was... to be a little extreme, I felt like I was imprisoned, what I mean? But I was with my family, and though having a good family and all that, there's just so much intergenerational trauma that I find goes unnoticed on a constant basis, because what is basically not realized is that a lot of immigrant families, they come into Canada with trauma, whether by war or some other crisis, you know what I mean? So I myself, as an Afghan Canadian, my parents have a lot of PTSD from the Afghan diaspora. So going through that every day with them, and then watching them being triggered with all the protests and all the rise in violence and racism and everything else that's been going on throughout this year, aside from the fact that we all were kind of jammed into that one little space, it was traumatic and it was very triggering. And I find, had I not had the cultural barriers and the mental stigma around depression in my home, even though it's such a huge issue. Had I been given those tools from a younger age, maybe either in school or even, provided counseling, I would have benefited a lot from that, because I felt like I went into a gunfight with a knife. That's how I felt most of the year. I had no coping tools. I had no skills to deal with my mental health. And I was so drained, emotionally drained all year. And I find that resonated with a lot of my immigrant friends.
Yeah, I hear that. Like escape, or being able to escape or move to different environments that we could find safety in is so important for our own mental health. And one thing that goes really unrealized is how incredibly necessary boundaries and privacy is. You can't really have that if you're constantly in the same house with the same people, and who knows like how you could properly define those boundaries within that home, that space. So those are definitely things to think about. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to move on to the next question. This is good. I really like this. But did you have any mental health related supports during the pandemic? What supports was provided? And if not, what do you guys wish was available? Let's start with Helena.
Sure. I actually was very privileged to have access to mental health support during the pandemic. After being on a waitlist for 2 different therapy programs for about 1.5 years, I got into both mid-2020, which was perfect timing. But during the first few weeks of lockdown, I actually had a PTSD episode that upgraded to manic episode and then slipped into a very convenient depressive episode. But I was able to go on a paid sick leave from work, an option that is not available to most youth. And I also received psychiatric services through school, as well as a lot of accommodations from professors and instructors who worked really hard to provide non-triggering content for me and alternative assignments. And these are things that were not available to most of my classmates for several reasons that I could talk about in like the next question. But it was just overwhelming to go from having nothing to everything, but also being able to acknowledge that I have access to these services that are not available to most people for several reasons that can be easily addressed most of the time.
And like, what kind of difference did that make for you?
It was overwhelming, and it's definitely something that I personally am not used to. From like culture with stigma, my culture doesn't take mental illness seriously. It's a creation of the West. It is not a disease, it's a choice, all the everything that's said about it. So receiving all that was very overwhelming, but also being able to receive the care was very hard, because we have the tendency to resist anything that's related to support because we're just not used to it. As Shavna says earlier, like we don't have the tools to neither cope nor accept any type of support because it's just not normal for us per se.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That is very insightful. Being able to have the perspective of what does work is really important for us to be able to actually like know what to keep doing in the future. Thank you. Marshall, I want to hear from you.
I would have to echo what was just said, that I did have access to supports. Like I already had supports in place prior to the pandemic, and I continued to seek support while the lockdowns continued to happen. And I feel like for my own personal experience and my shared experience being an Indigenous youth is the isolation from our cultural and our like traditional practices. It felt like though as if when we began to give restriction orders and stuff like that, these orders sort of superseded traditional ceremonies, and it felt like as if though that we had to adopt Western medical practices over our own traditional practices. So in my own opinion, I believe that the true healing and the true the best practices for many Indigenous peoples was practicing their own culture and having access to go back to our communities, which were restricted for a very long time, and meeting with our medicine peoples. was essential not only for our physical health but our mental well-being as well, because during the pandemic and during most of last year, the concern was not being able to participate in traditional ceremonies that happened out on the land and with elders and with medicine people. Those are vital aspects of an Indigenous person's well-being, and I believe that having access to that is a priority, as well as for Indigenous youth that are at higher risk across Canada. We all know the representation of Indigenous youth in care or problematic substance use, being not having access to education. We have to prioritize their traditional beliefs and worldviews to ensure that they can participate in society. So for me, that was my experience.
I do have like a follow-up question for you. It's more so around the lines of how do you think that as a society we can integrate these kind of Indigenous practices, or at least make mental health services that has a more cultural appropriate lens or an Indigenous lens more like applicable or available for you? Like, how do you think that the two should be integrated that would best support your community?
Yeah, so my perspective on that is that healthcare is very, as an Indigenous person experiencing a healthcare, there's a lot of discrimination. There's a lot of really systematic things that are at play that really put Indigenous people at higher risk to experience things that normally non-Indigenous people wouldn't experience. So if we want to approach healthcare and health services with an Indigenous perspective, we need to start bringing in those traditional knowledge holders and keepers and have them integrate in those practices. What we acknowledge as wisdom, the Western healthcare systems would acknowledge as data, and we need to start integrating the two to ensure that we are going forward in a way that our services are providing to are available for everyone and are accessible, because there are a lot of Indigenous peoples that are afraid to simply go and talk to a doctor just because there's just so many, it's so nuanced, there's just so many risk factors that are inherent in doing so. So there's a huge gap there.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing that. Can we hear from Steffi next?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat too much of what has been said, so I'll just keep it short and sweet. I am able to luckily have access to a therapist and a medical doctor, where I usually attend therapy not twice a week, sorry, every 2 weeks, and I get to see a doctor every few months, and obviously this is like a huge privilege, but I think it is important to acknowledge that being able to see a therapist every 2 weeks, sometimes it feels as if all the progress I've made 1 week kind of gets undone when I get to see the therapist next, because of the huge time, I guess the time from seeing a therapist once and then seeing them again 2 weeks from now. Even now, I think 2 weeks is extremely short time to see your therapist. Obviously, it'd be nice to see a therapist every week, but unfortunately, especially with publicly funded therapy, that's not often a possibility. I know when I attended the Student Wellness or McMaster and I saw a counselor at the Student Wellness Center, it was more like every month, which is a huge time gap between when you are able to see a counselor. And I think a lot of people, especially who have more pressing needs, need to see a counselor more often, but unfortunately they aren't able to, just because of wait lists and the mental health sector kind of being overloaded right now. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I also had the same issues with my counselor at McMaster, where If it was a more urgent need, then obviously, as the statistics were saying inside of the reports, they would prioritize like the care, the frequency a lot more. Instead of it being prevention, it would be more on the basis of crisis, and that system hasn't been working, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. Shab, did you have any other input for us?
I feel like I empathize with a lot of what was already said, but basically for me, I found this was actually last year was actually the first year where I sought help, and I actually found a counselor to speak to, and I'm still with them, and it has definitely helped me a lot. But this is after years of not being able to ask for help, or if I did want to, I was either financially constrained, or I was unable to talk about my issues because of cultural barriers, and just the fear of my parents finding out about all my traumas and all these things that I find a lot of marginalized youth and newcomer youth go through. So for me, I find what I would like to see is just better access and a more diverse system per se for mental health access. So for me, like Steffi was saying, when I started therapy, financial issues was the biggest thing. So there was one week where I could do a full hour session. Another week I had to bring it down to half an hour because it's a problem. And especially during this pandemic, there was a lot of unemployment. There's a lot of cutting hours, and a lot of people were looking for jobs. And I find marginalized youth went through the biggest disadvantages in this situation because they already probably had a lot of restrictions due to their cultural issues, and now they couldn't go to work either. They couldn't basically earn the money to afford Netflix, which was like the biggest coping tool for the entire country this year. In some cases didn't even have internet. Like I went through this for some time. I didn't have internet. Sometimes I didn't have money for even Netflix, so there was absolutely nothing to do. So there has to be a better system where it's either implemented into the education system as like part of OHIP, or as part of the education system, like a counselor. Like just looking at the fact that there's only one counselor per high school is troublesome. That's a lot of student for one person. I go to my therapist one time and I feel like I've already overwhelmed them. Imagine a counselor of 400 or 500 students. Something's not right, so there has to be a change in those regards.
I agree wholeheartedly in your answer with that. And this is kind of what I've heard as a consensus from everybody, is that those, especially who has accessibility through their schools, have been able to get access to supports right now. That is a big advantage. But it's also important to keep in mind of those who are probably living in shelters right now. I personally engage with a lot of individuals who don't have those kind of access, and the workers within those spheres don't have the proper training to be able to deal with such severe levels of mental health. But on top of that, when it comes to people who do have access to their universities and schools, it's not as efficient as it could be, because sometimes, quite frankly, the number of staff that is within the schools is not enough to support 20 or thousands of youth at the same time. So these are things to keep in mind.
I concur.
Love it. I would love to go on to the next question, and let's hear, based on your experience and work, in what ways can the government do better to address inequalities in mental health services within your community beyond COVID? This is a really interesting question. Let's hear from Helena.
So I had 3 ways to go about this, but I'm going to cut it back to 2 just for time purposes. So firstly, as has been echoed so far, we need better trauma-informed therapists and mental health professionals in general. Specifically, non-marginalized mental health professionals seem to have a very narrow view of what's considered trauma, and they tend to focus, from my experience and from those who have had access to certain mental health services, they tend to focus on significant events such as major physical assault, leaving out long-term repetitive traumas that a lot of people go through, such as specifically marginalized youth, intergenerational trauma, medical trauma that's very relevant throughout COVID. We have emotional abuse, racism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, the list goes on. And cultural competency plays a major role here because symptoms manifest differently, obviously, across cultures, and we can't just use one model to address all of them. And by excluding these repetitive long-term traumas, we're actually just further invalidating the experiences of marginalized youth and just perpetuating health disparities. And secondly, I think that like as a post-secondary student, we need academic funding, educators in general, but we have a lot of instructors who are doing their best to invest in technologies or whatever, just to conduct courses online, but most of them themselves don't have access to such resources. Like a lot of instructors are spending unpaid hours to edit videos, record additional lectures, because a lot of marginalized youth don't have access to internet, don't have access to safe space or quiet space to attend lectures or to attend classes. But at the same time, not all instructors are able to do that because they don't have access to such services either. So like at some point we have to start there as well to address certain issues, because like just like as students we're trying to adapt to these unusual circumstances, working from home from the same spot most of the time, so are they. And the motive here may be a bit selfish, but we can request accommodations from educators and institutions all day long, but the fact of the matter is they also don't have access to such resources to be able to help. And that's going to be specifically problematic for marginalized youth who are already dealing with so much on the side and they have no external support outside of the school system.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's hear next from Steffi.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo a lot of what Helena said. I think one big thing for me is encouraging diverse groups of students to go into the field of mental health to deal with the shortage. Like personally for me, I've never had, I'm Chinese and bisexual, and I've never had a racialized therapist to talk to. So I feel like a lot of the kind of complexities that come with my background don't really come across or like make sense to the therapist that I'm talking to, which is like a huge part of my background and a huge part of my mental health. And I'm just like unfortunately unable to really talk about that in depth. I think possibly like looking to offer scholarships or grants for educational opportunities and encouraging BIPOC to LGBTQIA folks, disabled folks, and non-English speakers to go into the field of mental health is really important, because you just having like a therapist that you can relate to when it comes to culture or to sexuality or something else is really important. There are a lot of traumas that can be related to your culture, to being a queer youth, and a lot of this isn't really addressed if all the people going into the field are cis, abled and white. And I think that is like a huge thing that I would like to be addressed.
I 100% agree. Representation is so incredibly important just for overall relationship building, right? Thank you guys. Very true. Calvin definitely agrees with the comment section. Thank you so much for sharing. Can we hear from Shab? I definitely want to hear what you have to say in regards to this question.
So for me, I find basically a lot of the points that were already mentioned, amazing points. Helena especially, I loved everything that she brought up, is basically all of my concerns as well. And I find with marginalized youth and newcomer youth, the biggest issue is always that cultural diversity in our mental health system, and having that respect for intersectionality, having that respect for, you know, where these people are coming from. Like I myself was dismissed a few times when I attempted to share my experiences with doctors or mental health professionals, because kids will be kids was the slogan, or because, you know, you're overreacting, or you're just being a teenager. This kind of language needs to be eliminated. It invalidates, like Helena said, the experience even further. And children are very sensitive, and youth are very sensitive. And in a time, especially like now, where there's an overload of the system, there has to be a better understanding of mental health. There has to be more funding for mental health professionals to even, have that career, to be motivated to get into that career, as Steffi said. And I find since like I started university, there's always been this issue that I don't want to study psychology. I don't want to get into mental health because there's not enough money in it, or it's just a dead end unless you go into psychiatry. And at that point, you're just prescribing pills most of the time because you're going by the hour, and every hour is like $300. Who has that kind of money in a marginalized community, low socioeconomic status? These things need to be taken into consideration. And one of the biggest ways the government can help with that is by funding mental health professionals, increasing their wages and giving them that incentive that helping people is a good thing, and not something that they have to drain themselves constantly in order to do so, that they don't have to have a second job, that they can do this full time and help people. Instead of having one counselor per high school, they should have more than one, numerous, at least one per 50 students, if they truly want them to get that well-rounded education in mental health. I've been trying myself to, create some sort of proposal to implement mental health education into our school system as early as elementary school. We have sex ed. Why don't we have a class for mental health education where children need to learn coping tools from a young age in order to build resilience, in order to build, that courage to speak their mind. I myself, when I was younger, I couldn't speak my mind. I was constantly afraid, didn't seem like it. I had a very tough exterior, but I couldn't speak my mind. I couldn't talk about my trauma. And all of that, a lot of that had to do is because there's not enough people to listen. You know what I mean? And if there were, I couldn't communicate with them because that was part of the trauma. Or there's the cultural bias. So this needs to be taken into consideration, that mental health education and coping tools, all these things need to be introduced at a much younger age in order to have a long-term positive benefit in the lives of, future Canadians.
I love that. I'm taking notes because there's a lot in which you've communicated. Things like increasing the capacity to support marginalized communities through obviously better training and increased funding, being able to properly communicate to these communities and having more compassion and awareness to the youth, for the youth, by being mindful and cognizant of your verbiage when having these conversations with them. These things are so, I'm taking notes and I'm definitely taking things away from this, but thank you so much for sharing that. I will love Marshall to go next and hear what he has to say to this question.
For me, in my experience, there needs to be a continuum of services. We talk a lot about that when we're doing outreach. During my time at the Brandon Bear Clan Patrol here in my community, that was a huge issue when we engaged with houseless individuals that were struggling with mental health issues. They didn't have no foundation to work off of, and I believe that if we want to really implement meaningful and impactful services, we have to prioritize housing, and we have to make sure that individuals who are going to receive care and services have somewhere to go sleep. And that's like a huge issue here. The houseless community in Brandon is ever growing, and with it there comes a lot of other impacts with that, and that's substance use and mental health issues. So a continuum of services would be also to make sure that the supports continue to come, and it's not just like a 21-day period. Okay, here you go, and then you're back out onto into the lifestyle that you're in with minimal risk. Like it seems there is a lack of services that kind of continue to be there to support you and make sure that you're on the right track and stuff like that. So I think that if we begin to, if the government begins to fund these nonprofit organizations that are, boots on the ground, engaging with these individuals, that we may find that we can have sort of these bridges in between these gaps, because a lot of the times too, is a lack of education for those that are struggling with mental health, and they just don't know what they're going through. And that's because of the education portion that all of you have spoken on, is that we don't know, as youth, most youth don't know what mental health is. They don't well, they do, but they don't know how to cope with it. And moreover, it's just another piece is like being able to recognize your own symptoms and your own risks and how to properly cope with them. So having those impactful like educational resources there for youth to engage in and to learn more about is I think critical as well. So there definitely needs to be a more implementation on that.
Yes, thank you so much. I 100% agree. Education is so important. I know we're at time right now. I just wanted to ask one more question to anybody who wants to answer this. What has given you hope, or how have you and yourself been able to cope? You know, what are some things that you could really send a message to the people to take away from this kind of conversation? And what are the things that kind of gives you hope? I will let one person answer this question. Is there anybody who really wants to provide some input? And we could close off there.
Go.
Yeah.
So my generation specifically, but a lot of the marginalized youth present here, and let's keep it at Canada, like we went through adolescence and young adulthood, in my case in war zone and some on front lines, and in a lot of cases a lot of us grew up with repetitive trauma, so we do not have a sense of who we are outside of trauma, and because of untreated mental illness and unrecognized mental illnesses and trauma. And I hate seeing that happen to youth now. We have resources, but we're just not allocating them properly to address these concerns. So what specifically gives me hope is, it's going to sound very cheesy, but seeing all of you just to channel that pain to try to make a positive change, to just be kinder to one another at the end. Oh, I'm Ellen generous now. But anyway, so we'll get through this. I have no idea in what shape or form, but hopefully for the better. I guess that's the goal.
Of course. I thank you, Helena. Thank you so much for all of your input. Thank you to everybody who's been able to participate in today's conversation. Your input has been valuable, and I'm very incredibly grateful to have these conversations with you guys. And yeah, I will allow now Norhan to take it away. And thank you so much for having us. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chanice, for being such a wonderful moderator. And thank you to our very, very passionate panelists for sharing their experiences and perspectives on such a very, very important issue. Now it's time for everybody to get up and get their body moving. We have Robin Lacambra, I hope I'm saying this correctly, a somatic coach and founder of GOODBODYFEEL Movement Studio. As a creator, mover, and a feeler, Robin believes that if you are alive, you're a leader. She runs various sessions, and no matter the project, Robin's work always comes back to the community. It empowers people to believe in the importance of creating a culture filled with compassion, so in turn, it can feel an environment of belonging for all bodies: the physical body, the body of the collective, and the body of the land. Take it away, Robin.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you so much for the invitation to partake in this really beautiful conversation about mental health. And a thing that I found really transformative in my own mental health journey is the role that our body plays. And so often in these spheres, when we talk about mental health, when we talk about learning, when we talk about growth, when we talk about justice, our body gets left out of that conversation. So I'm excited to bring our body back into the conversation as a way to see how this conference, or the conversations that have taken that have been had throughout the day, how they're landing in our body. So let's have an embodied check-in, yeah? I forgot to say, my name is Robin. I use the pronouns she, her. I'm a queer Filipinx, and I'm always trying to explore intersections and how we can increase our mutual understanding for multiple identity intersections so we can create a more compassionate space. And I'm excited to create compassionate space inside our bodies for the next 10 minutes. So I'm going to share some music, and I invite you to, if you feel like standing up, but everything that I offer is just an invitation. Everything that I offer is just an invitation. And you can even think of everything that I offer like a conversation starter that you're going to have with your body. So invitation to get up or stay exactly as you are, whatever you want. You get to be the active agent of choice over the next 10 minutes. But if you are standing up, sway from side to side, step your feet. If you're sitting down, knead your feet into the floor. And then look around. Where are you? Look around. Where are you? Get oriented in your space. Maybe finding something outside of you that feels familiar. That feels like, I feel comfortable with this thing. And I can presence myself with this thing. Maybe it's a familiar spot on the wall. Maybe it's a cushion on your bed. But definitely let it be somewhere other than the screen. You can stay with your attention here or feel the textures on your skin. Bring your awareness to the surface of you. On the floor. Your clothes or the temperature on your skin. So you can stay out here, outside of you, on the surface of you, or if you feel like it, drop your awareness inside, get oriented inside. What's here? Follow your breath as it enters your body. Follow your breath as it leaves. Finding some audible noise with your breath. Try it out. Let sensation find its voice, find its expression with deep breath. One more, big breath in. Sigh it out. Find some wiggles in your fingers. Let those wiggles turn into handshakes. Let those handshakes turn into big arm shakes. Let those big arm shakes turn into shoulder shimmies. And even if you're in your chair, get shaking with your legs, get shaking with your legs. Everything that was shared today was received by every single cell in your body. So let every single cell in your body join the conversation. Say hello. I'm paying attention to you. Hello. I honor you. Hello. Thank you for helping my body function. Thank you for helping me survive day to day, even though external forces make it hard. Yeah. Chill with the shakes. Inhale, take the arms up. Exhale, sweep the arms down. Ha. 2 more. Reaching and rooting. Expanding, releasing with breath. Pause here at the bottom. Feel. What is here? Notice. Recognize sensation. Recognize that sensation is your body talking to you. How often do you willingly engage in compassionate conversation with your body? Find those wiggles again. Find those shakes. Let those shakes get bigger. Let them get bigger, get wilder, get faster. Be in conversation with your body, maybe run on the spot. Whatever is pent up in you, let it out. Maybe scream. Allow yourself to be weird. Allow yourself to be unhinged just in this moment. Get unhinged. And then pause again. Finding that spot outside of you, on the surface of you, or inside of you. You get to choose how you align your attention. You get to choose how you find presence, but can you choose presence? Can you support yourself, encourage yourself to be courageous enough to take choice and to choose presence? Rolling the shoulders up towards the ears, down the back. Allow that to continue. And just noticing how this movement, your breath, and sensation collaborate. Let these three things talk to each other. Let the conversation take turns, take rotations, take new direction. Follow the lines of conversation in this movement. So maybe your body says, let's lean over this way. Maybe it says, oh no, that was too far. Maybe it says, try the other direction. Maybe it says, oh no, that's too much. And just learning to recognize your body's boundaries and learning to respect them. Circle in the opposite direction. Just notice whatever thought gremlins might come up, like, oh, I'm moving wrong, or this is not what I thought it was going to be, or shoulder circles are this, my body is that. Stop judging the moment. Stop gaslighting or tone policing your own sensations. Generously listen with compassion. Maybe keep moving, maybe find stillness, maybe find somewhere in between. Invitation to stay standing or invitation to come to a seat. Wherever you are, feet called, maybe palms on thighs, palms turned upwards. Maybe hand on heart, hand on belly. And maybe if you feel like it, a full embrace. Your nervous system receives touch as touch as touch. So let your nervous system receive your compassionate touch here. You stay with your breath. The sensations your breath finds living in your body. Let your ego win. Sensations validated, affirmed. What you feel how it would shift. Transformation happens, healing happens. You envelop with nourishing inhale What can you release with a liberating exhale? Invitation to have a mantra here. With the inhale, I have choice. With the exhale, I choose courage. Let's do that 2 more times. Inhale, I have choice. Exhale, I have courage. 1 more time. Slowly represencing yourself into the room, reorienting yourself in your space once more, maybe finding that spot, that familiar thing. And let's take one final cleansing breath together with movement or not. It's up to you. Big breath in. Release it out. How much we can shift in just 10 minutes of embodied awareness. I'm curious how you feel. Drop 1 in the chat box if you're feeling grounded. Drop 2 in the chat box if you're like, I'm confused what just happened. But thank you so much for having me. And if you want to learn more about me and my work and how I fuse trauma awareness with movement and with radical agency and welcoming, you can find me at royolaroyola.com or goodbodyfeel.com. Thank you so much. Ooh, I love the ones. Thank you so much. And I wish for you a wonderful rest of conference, and I will catch you tomorrow for another 10-minute grounding shakedown. Peace, everybody.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was so relaxing. I think before my shoulders were feeling a bit tense and even in my back. And just the movement and everything, and even just the positive thoughts really made me feel a lot better, less tense. So thank you so much. I hope all of you felt wonderful in the same way. Yeah, like you said, we're seeing lots of ones and great feedback in the chat. So thank you so much, Robin. So now it is time for our last panel for today, which is our youth professional panel, which we'll get to share which is a panel of people who work in the field who get to share their experiences as professionals. Our moderator for the panel was going to be the wonderful Asma Ali, but unfortunately she sends her regrets as she has a medical issue that she needs to tend to at the moment. I was truly looking forward to see her moderate this panel, but personal well-being should always be a priority. Alternatively, this panel will be moderated by the amazing Norhan Ahmed, founder of Women X Network. Norhan is a writer and community builder. She completed her undergraduate degree at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Her mission led her to start Women X Network, an inclusive network of women to empower others, share industry knowledge, and open doors to opportunities. She is a board member at BAM Collective and led the first virtual event in New York City. She joined the In This Together campaign because she believes that youth are the voice of this generation surrounding the gaps in mental health resources. Take it away, Norhan.
Hello, welcome. I am headlining the last panel for today. Thank you for joining us up until now. And I'm just waiting for my panelists to be spotlighted. So I'm just waiting for them. Okay. Hello, ladies. Change of events, but I'm here and you're in good hands. Thank you, Robin, for that restorative and mindful exercise. I feel rejuvenated, and thank you, Lila, for that wonderful introduction. Our community leader, Asma Ali, is feeling under the weather today and couldn't moderate this panel. We wish her a speedy recovery. Now to introduce our final panel for the day, our Youth Mental Health Professionals panel. These amazing women go above and beyond for their clients and patients at their places of work. They are leaders in their communities, and they raise awareness that mental wellness and healing collectively is everyone's right. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. As mental health professionals, I can only imagine how close you are when you're helping others with their mental health or educating others about mental health related issues. I am truly honored to be able to lead the discussion today to learn more about your work and how we can bridge the gap of mental health resources for marginalized youth. Each speaker will have 1 to 2 minutes max to speak. Please utilize the raise the hand function on the bottom panel of your Zoom if you would like to add any additional points to the discussion or would like to be called on next. If not, I'm just going to call on you randomly. So now I'm going to read your bios and then we're going to head into the discussion. Asoomii Asma Ali was nominated as the world's most influential Muslim youth in 2016 by King's College and as a human rights defender by Amnesty International in 2018. She is a Canadian Muslim public figure and a cancer survivor. She is known for her mental health advocacy and for her humanitarian volunteer work in refugee camps around the world. She is certified by the Canadian Coaches Federation and mentors her clients to overcome their mental health struggles and remain resilient in the face of adversities. Welcome, Asoomii. Asma Ali is a Somali Canadian qualifying RP. She graduated from Emmanuel College at the University of Toronto with a master's in pastoral studies. She works as both a spiritual practitioner and part-time as a qualifying RP. She provides one-on-one psychotherapeutic services to people that seek her. Welcome, Asma. Jude Ibrahim is a student at Concordia University completing her master's in art therapy. She has a BA in art education with a minor in psychology. Her experience and training in a variety of sites allowed her to witness how the creative process can be a catalyst for emotional expression, identity building, storytelling, and a form of communication when words do not suffice. Welcome, Jude. And last but certainly not least, Maria Estrada is a mental health advocate, motivational speaker, and child and youth counselor specializing in mental health and addictions. She is the recipient of the United Way Hamilton Community Speaker Award and the 2019 Vicky Award for her Shine In and Shine Out. Welcome, ladies. It is an honor to be able to lead the discussion with you all today. And I'm going to start it off a little bit differently today. Despite the ongoing challenges with COVID, what gives you hope? And I'm going to call on Maria first.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. I mean, one of the things that gives me hope is this conference, right? We're able to talk about what the government and just anything in the system is missing in regards to mental health. And just having and hearing all the conversations gives me a lot of hope for not just myself, but other people. And in general, I think that with COVID, we've had the privilege of kind of getting to know ourselves a little bit more. And that to me gives me hope. And the people that are receiving services have that opportunity as well. And because we're working from home, especially for myself, I do have that time to work with people one-to-one and support them through their recovery.
Amazing. Would any of you ladies want to go next, or am I going to call on you? Okay, Asoomii.
I agree with Maria. This conference is something that does give me hope. It's something that's been needed, to bring together professionals, government officials, and most importantly, the youth, to hear directly from them of how they've been impacted, how they're dealing. Because a lot of times when we're doing conferences for the youth, it's the professionals talking about the youth, and the youth aren't actually being given a voice. So something like this, an initiative like this is honestly amazing, and where we can also talk about real tangible solutions, and where hopefully we're going to be able to see this in actions as well. So as we mentioned previously in the conference, there's a lot of talking about mental health and mental health awareness, and promoting it and call this helpline, but we do need some tangible actions. So just initiatives like this, you guys are doing amazing, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this.
Amazing, thank you. Asma?
So I'm Asma Ali, she, her. I agree with both Maria and Asoomii. I think one of the things that I didn't realize how much I've been feeling isolated as a professional until this moment where I'm sitting here and I'm kind of holding back tears. I miss being around people and just having conversations. So I guess this is a little bit of a pandemic thing, but I really miss just being around people who are solution oriented and people who are talking about what we're going through. And there's a sense of empowerment. I'm feeling as I sit with you. The other things that have been helping me feel hopeful during the pandemic is this global movement that we're all witnessing and we're all part of. There's something prior to COVID, I remember feeling hopeless about what is my role in the world. Post-COVID, Black Lives Matter, and now Palestine, I feel like there is something I can do regardless of how small that is. There is something I can do. And it's quite an interesting shift, that feeling. And I witnessed that in the people that I serve. I witnessed that in my household. I witnessed that in my friends. I witnessed that in social media. That's definitely one of the best things that's giving me hope.
Most definitely, it's very, very important to have hope. Jude?
Yeah, I echo everything you all said, especially that we have been living in a virtual world, and although we may have fought it a bit, I found so many new potentials. I've met so many new people throughout this year, and it just gives me hope. It gives me hope that we can form new connections, even in ways that we didn't imagine we can do. It really allowed us, it gave us points of self-reflection. I think, Maria, you mentioned that. And although there were moments of isolation, there was a lot of learning moments, a lot of silver lining. And I think just bringing that and being transparent. So I'm really hopeful and grateful to be a part of this and coming together and making sure that we share these experiences, both the low points, in order to work towards action points and turn things that we learned into actual actions that we could use to change things.
Absolutely. So now to get into the heart of this discussion, in your line of work and professional experience, what gaps in mental health have you been observing, and what's one area you've been working towards to provide solutions? So I'm gonna call randomly Asma.
Thank you. So I have had training at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. Again, my role is a spiritual care practitioner and psychotherapy and psycho-spiritual care. So I've had the privilege of being trained again at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, CMHA, Scarborough General Hospital, and now I work part-time at at St. Michael's Hospital. One of my default emotions, and my history probably very well explains it, is anger. And the gaps that I've witnessed primarily comes from my training. You know, I would be trained and taught, let's say in cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectic behavioral therapy, narrative therapy, all of these therapeutic theories and interventions that we're trained in. And the people that I'm providing those trainings are people of color predominantly. And I would ask, how do I translate and take the interventions I'm learning and apply it to the people that I'm serving? I don't know. My teachers, if not one of them, except one of them, have been white. And there are allies and people who are culturally competent, but it still left me feeling there are so many gaps in my training. I don't feel competent as a therapist right now to be able to provide accurate services, services that fits my clients, that are going to be effective for my clients long term. So one of the biggest gaps I see for now is that training. So one of the ways I'm trying to combat it is to continue to educate myself. Go and seek my own Black supervisors, seek Indigenous supervisors, speak with teachers who are not accessible to me. Thank you, the internet. Thank you, online services, who are able to teach me. And yeah, I'd definitely say more, but I think I'll leave my colleagues to fill out that gaps. That's the thing that I'm most critical about.
Wow, you opened my eyes to something I had no idea of. Wow. Asoomii, would you like to give your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm a mental health coach and I do coaching online. I basically work with registered therapists and counselors. So I help their clients, basically mentor them achieve their goals, and especially those who do have, who are struggling with mental health, I do try to help them rise up to their full potential. And now with COVID and everything that has happened, a lot of people have felt a little bit hopeless and not feeling like they're not able to achieve their goals, or like, what is the point? of everything. So that is one thing. Also the accessibility and the stigma around what we do in the mental health industry, as well as financial restrictions. So not everyone can afford coaching or therapy, and especially now where everything is closed as well. A lot of times I find that people from lower income households who may not have the tools to also access the sessions virtually. So like the education system was able to provide low income houses with laptops. I think it was one laptop per household to be able to give them that online learning. So that was another issue as well, being able to see people virtually. What I've been doing personally to try to fill in the gaps is reduced rates because coaching is private. So my intention is really to try to support people through this, get them back on their feet, especially with people losing jobs, unemployment, feeling lost, not knowing, what is their purpose and how to take control of their life again. I've reduced it much lower than the market as well, but I really do want to help empower the youth to not give up and keep pushing through and make something of themselves, and especially during a time where we really don't know what's going to happen next with the lockdowns and the curfews. And so I'm just there to try to help give solutions and then help the youth rise up again.
And I really admire that you're willing to reduce rates, because it really makes a difference. The pandemic has really had a financial impact on so many people. So thank you for sharing. Jude?
Yeah, so currently I'm a master's student studying art therapy and training in art therapy. I'm also working as a mental health coordinator at the Refugee Center. So I really look at it in two parts. And I think, Asma, you brought up such an interesting insight related to training, where, currently working with newcomers, I question, is my training suitable? Is my training, the right training for newcomers from different cultural backgrounds? And that is a prominent gap. In terms of working within the Refugee Center with clients and newcomer clients, affordability and accessibility is a huge gap. Financial barriers, immigration status, insurance types, these are all layered that increase the obstacles. Another big gap is that the demand is high, but the presence of mental health services is low. Mental health practitioners are overbooked, oversaturated. And also another gap is going back to that culturally humble approaches and culturally competent approaches, and knowing that as I work with these newcomers, that I want to provide them with referrals that I know they can be safe in and feel comfortable in. So there's a lot of responsibility there, but there's also a big gap. In terms of solutions at the Refugee Center, really trying, first of all our services are free. So in terms of affordability, we don't want to play a role in increasing these barriers. In terms of creating services, we really focus on the diversity of services. So we want to create opportunities and different types of services, whether it's individual one-on-one supports, creating new support groups. And within my role and learning in art therapy, I'm really trying to integrate creative arts therapy groups and thinking of services not just as coping skills, but rather creating opportunities and spaces for self-care, and really realizing that art has an impact to overcome these language barriers and that we can connect through things beyond just words.
Amazing, amazing. Yes, of course, I can imagine at the Refugee Center, as someone who's a newcomer just coming to a different country, you already have so much stacked against you, just different cultural barriers and just the way that their parents think, and maybe the trauma that basically led them to Canada is just it's just a lot going on. So thank you. Your work is especially very much impactful. So thank you, Jude. Maria?
Yes. So I'm just gonna start by saying that I do work within the Halton, Mississauga community, and I do work in different agencies. So I'm not going to be speaking the rest of the agencies. I am going to speak about my experience. So I just want to say that I'm not representing them. I'm representing myself and what I've experienced. So I think one of the things that if we look at the bigger picture of what the mental health system is lacking is the integrative system. What we're seeing currently within my community, Halton, is that there is lack of integration within one system to the other. So we'll have people come out of hospital because they've been hospitalized due to suicidal ideations or attempts. And then once they get out of the hospital, what happens next? right? There's no reintegration plan because the community partners are so overwhelmed. And within the community, we have been coming together to figure out what the plan is, because we can't change other regions, but we can change what Halton does. So we've been working together in regards to bringing the community partners. So if somebody needs housing, we contact this person or that person and that person. And for the agency that I currently work at, we do house people that we do housing, we do peer support, we do, mental health, addiction, justice within one agency, because there is lack of those programs because there's no funding, right? And the lack of the levels that we see and the gaps. So the TAY community, which is transitional age youth, right? There's the youth sector, there's the adult sector, but what about the people that are transitioning? So we're looking at people that are 17, early 20s, that they're left within the gap because there isn't necessarily, they don't fit into the youth, they don't fit into the adults. So that's something that we are missing. And Halton, the community, we are trying to fill that gap to figure out that nobody's getting missed after whatever incident that they've had or whatever issue that they have. So that's one of the things that I see all the time, that is, that we're lacking, and it's due to funding and it's due to lack of resources. And, one of the things is that I do within my practice and within the agencies that I work with here in Halton is that we listen to what the voice of the youth, of the client, of the patient, and what they need, right? I'm a professional. We're all professionals. We've studied it. For myself, I do have that lived experience. So I do have that privilege of having mental health and addiction. I do call it a privilege. And we actually listen to the voices of what they need, right? Sometimes we forget that, and we forget that they actually have a voice. So whenever they come out of the hospital or they come out of jail or they don't have any housing, we come together and it's like, what do you want? What are you looking for? And how can we support you? We're not going to meet you at the end. We're actually going to walk with you and alongside you in your journey. That's something that I practice, and it's something that I do with my friends, with my family, with anybody in the community. But within the mental health system and addiction, that's what we do. So I'm not representing my agencies. I am representing the Halton community and my community in general.
That sounds fantastic, just fantastic, and we need more of that in other communities, because I know that Canada's large and vast. Like, I didn't even realize how big Canada was. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many provinces. I've never been to Canada. So it's just amazing. Like, I just wish that like whatever worked in one province, one community can be implemented in others, but there's always like this, sometimes there's just not a lack of resources or lack of access to resources. And certain areas might be underfunded, areas might be funded better depending on, I don't know, the tax bracket or just how the community thrives and what's its main income. So going off of what Maria said, what action items should the government invest in to help aid in mental well-being post-pandemic? What hasn't been done that needs to be implemented? And to think of this question, it's unfortunately, mental health is something that's going to be important even beyond the pandemic. When we are all vaccinated, hopefully, and we obviously can go out and like regular life, quote unquote, resumes. What is one thing, and I know Maria said funding, and funding has been coming up a lot, as well as just integrative care and just making sure that like basically the government is aware of newcomers, Indigenous, and like what are the needs of every single underrepresented group. But what's one thing that comes to mind that will make your work easier in the sense that you're able to help your clients and patients better? What's one thing that comes to mind? And I'll call on Jude.
Yeah, there's so many, but if I can narrow it down, I think when we talk about funding, it's really funding the grassroots, the communities that are actually working like by the people, for the people, like really knowing what their needs are. And in terms of that, also funding prevention programs, early intervention. We always think about prevention as the best form of intervention, and to really think of it from a psychoeducational perspective, to really present different types of services, and going back to the idea of diversity of services, and making sure that there are spaces where, as a student who's training right now, there's this hesitation of when I go into the field, I'd feel more confident if the government would be able to fund and support piecemealing, and just the idea of working part-time and allowing more on-site mental health providers in universities, communities, schools. So I guess these are the points that I can bring across.
Asoomii?
So during the pandemic, we've seen an increase of domestic violence, suicide rates, mental health crises, where the paramedics and police, they've been busier than usual. And so there are resources to help the citizens if there's something to break out, but this is treating the symptom. We actually have to go back and treat the root cause, which means looking at the beginning. So as we were talking about funding, hiring more counselors and coaches to work in different regions, and providing actual free mental health care. So as we were talking about previously in the conference, and as well with my personal experience growing up, being passed on from counselor to counselor, therapist to therapist after your free session ends up isn't something that would be beneficial to the youth, because you face anxiety and you have to open up all over again. You're put in a very vulnerable situation. Another idea would be to provide tools for low-income houses. So those, for virtual appointments, for example, iPads or tools or whatever it may be, the same way the education system is doing for online learning. And the last thing I think is that we need to implement mental health and mindfulness in the curriculum, so that children can actually grow up without the stigma. So countries such as Portugal, Sweden, and the Netherlands, they've already implemented this program and they've seen a positive effect on the students. Because with Canada, I'm speaking from personal experience and the feedback I get back from the youth, is that most of the schools typically have that one counselor, and it's not always working out. They aren't really trained to be mindful or help the youth with the now. Sometimes they end up dismissing their mental health and just simply focusing on the future. So implementing these programs, and a lot of times with the youth, they think that what they're going through might be, this is just how it is, this is normal. You know, at home, you don't have that mental support. And so they need to be taught that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to actually get that help. It's okay. So I think we do need to start from the education, and hopefully that'll have a lasting impact.
Exactly, 100%. And you know, I remember I was telling my parents once, I'm like, Mom, Dad, I'm depressed, and they're like, go read the Quran. I'm like, you know, this. No, it's gonna work. It's gonna work for a little bit, but then it's gonna come back again, the problem, because there's just something that's going on with me. There's something that's not right. And I didn't realize I was depressed for years. And I'm like, oh my God, like nobody told me about this, and nobody told me that I should probably go to a therapist. So like I started to seek therapy at like 26, and I found things about myself that I had no idea, because they didn't teach us about this in high school or middle school. They taught us sex ed, but didn't teach us like mental health education, like create a workshop about post-traumatic stress disorder. Create a workshop about like domestic violence and what to look at if you are being abused. And we never had that. It was just kind of like a taboo topic. Recently, there's been an increase where there's like platforms now and magazines and things that people are doing for mental health, such as this wonderful campaign and this wonderful space that we're in. But it just wasn't like that a couple of years ago, really wasn't. So Asma?
I think my colleagues have said all that needs to be said, but I think I'd like to reiterate, you know, this pandemic has taught us the intersections. Literally, just by showing us snapshots of the maps of Toronto, we can overlay who has COVID impacted the most, and where are our communities of color and communities of lower income live. You know, so this pandemic has showed us the intersections that and the disparities. It's really exacerbated the disparities that we witness in our communities. So I feel like you know, I'm not a politician, so my language isn't going to be political or in a policy term, but I think, you know, we exist as people, we exist as communities, we don't exist just as an individual, and we can't just address one issue. And I think COVID has shown us that addressing funding, it's important. Funding is connected to education. Education is connected to accessibility and what's affordable and what's available. Education is also connected to training. Training is connected to funding. We are so interconnected, and I really think that our government, if there's one thing that I could give to them, is focus on the holistic connection of all the things that we do. And education, I think it's definitely preventative in the beginning in schools, and it's a long life thing. And you know, as a therapist who's trying her best to decolonize her work, I have met my clients in their closets this pandemic. I have met them in their bathrooms. I have met them in their cars for those that could afford their cars. I have met some of them connected to their nearest Starbucks or to Morton's Wi-Fi because they first wanted privacy, and also because they didn't have data and they didn't have the funding, or they lost their jobs. You know what I mean? And all of that is part of what exacerbates their mental health. So I almost can't separate one issue into another. And again, I'm sorry, my language is not as political as
you are fine. You are amazing, and you're making several points. Thank you. Maria?
Yeah, so I will agree with everybody and what they've said. I do want to take the opportunity because there are government people representing here. So sometimes I don't have a filter when it comes to funding, which is great, especially in this moment. But when we talk about funding, it's actually a bigger picture. It's about a comprehensive strategy. The government, unfortunately, likes to throw money at big agencies, big community partners, because it looks good. Right? Oh, this, I'm not gonna call names, but like, this is a big organization in Canada. Let's throw money in there. First of all, they already have tons of money, right? They don't need it. What we gotta look at is the lower level of community partners, right? I'm speaking from Halton. If anybody knows, it's right between Mississauga and Hamilton. We're right there. And one of the things is, like, we are so flooded with people and we have no funding. And one of the things that we have done is that, you know, normally we do get a raise, not the big one. If I wanted money, I would have become a lawyer. But our executive director came to us and said, listen, we need to come up with a strategy, because a lot of our youth that we're representing are, one of them is camping out in a forest because they don't have money. The other one can't afford therapy. They don't have technology. We all decided that with that money, let's buy iPads. Let's continue to build our housing department so we can continue to house those people. We don't have money, we're nonprofit agencies. So there needs to be that comprehensive strategy that is gonna trickle down to the partners and to the lower agencies that are being represented without the GTA in Canada and all of that. One of the things is, like, and I worked in every sector. So when we're looking at housing, no money for housing. We're looking at eating disorders. We all know the statistics right now at eating disorders. I personally struggle with an eating disorder, no support whatsoever. COVID has been super hard. Addiction, 75% of overdoses. Like, I'm a recovering addict. I have lost so many friends and acquaintances during the pandemic because of overdose. Why are we not adopting what Vancouver is doing with their needle exchange? Right? All of those things, because what? It doesn't look pretty, because it sucks, because the government doesn't like it. Well, reality is people are dying because they're overdosing. So how about we put some money into naloxone, into training, into safer injection sites, harm reduction? Why are we not doing that? Sexual assault. I used to work at sexual assault and human trafficking. Are we even talking about that? Human trafficking is huge. There's no funding. At one point, as a trauma counselor, I had 40 clients in my caseload of sexual assault and human trafficking survivors. And we were picking up every type of money that we could to support these people. Violence within the homes, domestic violence, we've seen that because of COVID. People don't talk about it. We got to start to create those plans. And one of the things that really, really bothers me about the government is that they all make their own different plans when it comes to mental health and addiction. There isn't a hub of what it actually should look like and then spread it out. It's like we give money to Ontario, to this, to that, and they come up with whatever they want. Well, that's not how it works. Right? So let's actually, from the top, create a comprehensive strategy that everybody's gonna follow, that is gonna benefit everybody else. The last thing that I'm gonna say, because I'm going on a rant, is the fact that the government isn't listening to the people that actually have lived experience. They're just doing whatever they want because they're the government, which I appreciate so very much, just want to say. However, it has impacted myself and my recovery and everybody that I support, because my voice was never heard when it came to the services that I needed. When other people, they have nothing to say. Why are we not listening to the people that actually have the lived experience, that they know firsthand as to what they need in their recovery? Why is the government not listening to that? We come as professionals. I absolutely appreciate our professionals. Some of them have lived experience. Others just read the textbooks, which is great, but they're not people that have gone through the system. And that's something that we're missing. So I'm gonna stop ranting. I did take the opportunity because government people are here. So thank you so much for listening to me. And yeah.
Maria, that was powerful. And I can definitely relate as someone who is New York based, not Canada based. It's the same thing everywhere where funding is not really allocated to the proper resources. So that's why we are having these conversations. That's why all you amazing women in your professions, you are the voice of this, you are the voice of this generation. We, all of us collectively, the fact that Abrar started this campaign, we're in this space, we're having these events, we're talking and connecting with each other. We are the voice of this generation in a way that our parents weren't because they weren't as aware of these issues. They had them, they might have had them, but they still weren't talking about it because it was taboo. But now we're using our voice, we're using our platforms, we're part of events, we're part of campaigns, we're part of grassroots organizations, we're partnering with them. If we can collectively network and just like link up, we can rise together and like create the change that we want. So thank you, Maria, so much. So our last question for the day, because I had other questions, but you ladies are amazing. You just went through the entire question without me having to ask, which is amazing. And it just shows just how much impact and how much you care about the work you're doing. So thank you for just, existing, and thank you for the work that you do. Last question, what tips can you share to help youth cope during this difficult time? I know that some of us don't have like the financials. It is a big issue. I mean, for me too as well. For financially wise, like what tips can you share?
Mommy, my kiki.
Maria.
Okay. Some of the tips that I can share, reach out to people. You don't need money to do that, right? It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to struggle. I had a client call me today from the hospital and being like, I'm not okay. Does that make me crazy? I was like, it doesn't make you crazy because I'm not okay. So let's normalize that being okay. Reaching out. I know exercise is super good. Like I don't exercise, so I'm not gonna like preach that. But it's really looking at your circle of care and working through that. The weather's getting nicer, so make sure that you're getting out there and enjoying the weather. But right now we're missing connection, and connection, I always say, it's the opposite of addiction. As a person that's a recovering addict, so I make sure that I have connections with the people that are around me to keep my recovery. If it's a phone call, if it's online, if it's from like 10 feet away and we're yelling at each other, make sure that you reach out to that. And just so you know, like none of us are okay. Yeah. None of us are okay. So let's normalize that.
Yeah. I am with you on I don't know about you, but my depression has gotten worse with the pandemic. It's like, oh no, I can show you how worse it can get. That's what the pandemic whispered to me in my ear. Jude?
Yeah, I think basically, I think we've been bombarded with what to do, how to care for ourselves on social media. Mental health has been the theme of the year, although it should be the theme of our whole life. But for this year, I think the tip that I always give myself and would like to give others is that what works for you today might not work for you tomorrow. You can change it. It's okay. And what worked for someone else may not work for you. So don't judge that. Don't fight it. Listen to your body. Do what's right for you.
100%. Asoomii?
For me, the one thing that has helped me, and my advice to everyone, it's what you eat and getting exercise, as Maria said, even if it's just going out for a walk. I try to make sure that I do at least one walk a day, just go around, enjoy the fresh air. And now it's nice out, get some vitamin D. That's going to help boost your morale as well. And the other thing is do connect with your peers. even if it's virtually. So for me, whenever I go out for a walk, I would call my friend, just video chat. She goes out for a walk. It's so we can feel that we're not alone, we're not isolated. We still have that connection. And it just feels like you're walking with a friend. And it's okay to ask help, and it's okay to not be okay, and never think of yourself as a burden. Like, we're all there for each other. Everyone is, going through a hard time. This year has not been easy on anyone. And I think the one thing that the youth have, but people look happy on social media, disconnect from social media as well, turn the world off and just focus on your own inner peace, what's going on inside your home, and don't worry about anything else out there.
100%. I always say to myself, it's okay if I'm not okay, but I will be. And if I have those days, then that's fine. Like, that means I'm human, and sometimes things might get to me, whether it's a job loss, a friend loss, whatever it is, So just always, like, whoever's like watching here, just, it's okay if you're not okay, but you will be, as long as you care and prioritize your self-care and make sure you're surrounded by good people. And whether that's family, friends, make sure you're surrounded by good people, set your boundaries, and you will be okay. Just prioritize that self-care. Esther?
Thank you. Absolutely. I am not okay. I have not been okay this year, and we are not okay. And it's okay to not be okay. I think I'm going to reiterate that, as my colleagues have said. One of the things that's been helping me, and I think just the fact that Ramadan has just passed kind of reaffirms that for me, is my spiritual life. Connecting, if you have a spiritual life, if that, means, if that's a source of nourishment for you, connecting to something beyond ourselves, that's definitely been helping me. And I've actually kind of taken on this little journey of creating a self-care kit. It sounds really cute, it sounds nice, but if there's a little kind of, as Jude was saying, what didn't work yesterday, what worked yesterday might not work today, but at least I have a kit of things that have historically worked for me. Let me see, okay, that podcast, that music, oh, that friend, oh, that TV show, oh, that food tasted amazing, or that thing my therapist has said. But just a kit of things that have worked for me and have helped me. And prayer for me is an important part of that self-care kit. Thank you.
Amazing. I think I'm ready to wrap this up. Does anyone have any questions for these amazing ladies? If not, I'm ready to end the panel, and I can talk to you forever. Let's hop on a separate Zoom. Let's just talk. We can keep going forever. Like, it's just amazing.
I can continue.
Yeah. Yes, and like, it's just amazing how all of you have different like places of work that you work. There's just like an area of like mental health that you're more focused on. Whether it's psychotherapeutic, whether you're coaching your clients, whether you're working with more with addictions, or you're able to share that experience, or either you're at the Refugee Center, like whatever it is, it's just you're creating that impact on you might feel it's on a local level, but it's really on a global level, because whoever's going to watch this now is going to like look at and see like, wow, like there's an Asma Ali, there's a Jude Ibrahim, there's a Estrada, there's an Asoomii Jay, there's a Norhan who's willing to moderate this panel so that we can talk about this, because we need to talk about it. It's not going to go away. Mental health is still very important. Even after this conference is over and after this event is over, it's still important. We still need to talk about it, and we just have to look out for each other, and may we be the voice of change. So if no one has any questions, I would love to end this panel, and thank you so much to all of you. I'm big fans of all of you, and please, let's follow each other on social media. Let's stay connected, and social media is the medium right now until we're all vaccinated and we can see each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, what a panel. Thank you so much, ladies. What a powerful, impactful, insightful panel. Thank you so much for sharing such a great tips. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Norhan, for moderating and stepping in at the last minute. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Hope you found it valuable, eye-opening, and like you took something out of this conference, and we hope to see you tomorrow. I want to do a special shout out to Jannat Akbar for coordinating today, and for Norhan also for being being there for the last minute. To our tech support, the great Muhammad and Muhammad Bazai, Alex and Faiza as well. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for everyone who attended today. Hope we see you tomorrow. Please make sure that you follow our social media. You stay tuned for the update of this conference and the highlight of this conference and what's coming next because we have so much to share, and I'm so overwhelmed by us because we are here all you, especially the panelists. You were amazing. Thank you so much for each one who were panelists with us today, and I hope to see you tomorrow. And we are so sorry because we're over time, but actually the conversation is rich and we cannot just stop. Please, I wish you a good night, and I wish to see you tomorrow. Bye bye, take care.